Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everybody to the regular scheduled board meeting for July the 10th, 2018, here in South Walton. I'd ask anybody that has any electronic devices to please silence them at this time. If you have to carry on an extensive conversation with your neighbor, I'd ask you to take it to the hall out here so it doesn't interrupt the rest of the meeting. For the record, Commissioner Nipper is not present. She's out of country. And Cecilia Jones is not present. Her husband's in the hospital. He's having some major health issues, and she's elected to be with him tonight, which I do not blame her. So with that said, I'm going to ask Father Michael Hartley with St. Rita Catholic Church to come forward and offer the invocation, then we'll have the pledge.
Christ the Lord bore our infirmities and endured our sufferings. He went about doing good, leaving us an example to follow. Having Christ's charity as the foundation of all we do, let us pray to him, and please respond, Lord, hear our prayer. Lord, for our sake you were poor, and came not to be served, but to serve. Grant that we too may love our brothers and sisters and help them in their need. We pray to the Lord. Lord, hear our prayer. By your redeeming work, you made a new world where we have become neighbors to each other and are enabled to love one another. Grant that we too may strive toward a way of life in keeping with the gospel. We pray to the Lord. Lord, hear our prayer. You want all people to share in the blessings you have brought. Stir the hearts of many among your people so that, moved by your love, they may gladly devote themselves to assisting those in need and in misfortune. We pray to the Lord. Lord, hear our prayer. And let us pray. Blessed are you, Lord God of mercy, who through your Son gave us a marvelous example of charity and the great commandment of love for one another. Send down your blessings on these your servants, who so generously devote themselves to helping others. When they are called on in times of need, let them faithfully serve you in their neighbor. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have 3 additions and 3 deletions.
And I've got a deletion too.
So you're going to make it unbalanced?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. You want to start?
Yeah, if we could, Mr. Chairman, can you delete item number 14 on the agenda? We'll have that back to you at the next board meeting.
Under the consent agenda?
Yes, under the consent. Did you
School
already?
board?
Yeah.
That counted as one of our 3, so we're still even.
Okay.
Okay. So, but for additions, under the county attorney, we need to add a request to advertise to hold an executive session in, what do you say that name? Vecchio versus Walden County. Under planning and development, we need to add, which will be addition number 2, request to approve and authorize the chair to sign a resolution authorizing a Walton County application to DOT for transit service development for South Walton County utilizing electric transit vehicles. And addition 3 is a request approval to advertise a request for proposals or qualifications for transit service providers for north-south commuter assistance transit service along US 331 from Defuniak Springs to Santa Rosa Beach, and future transit operations for the US 98 County Road 38 area in South Walton. So those 3 are additions. Under the deletions is number 9 on the consent agenda, which was a request to transfer $5,000 from Section 8 housing contingency to cover costs to travel expenses. Number 14, school board resolution, as Ms. Norris just mentioned. And then under TDC, number 34, which was request to approve a conceptual design for the new Seagrove Regional Beach access and to move forward with formal design and planning permitting applications.
All right. What's the board's wishes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Entertain a motion to, hold on, never mind. Got ahead of myself. At this time, it's open for public comment. Public comment is for any agenda item that we have. You can speak to it now. We will have the opportunity for public comment as we go through each agenda item. So if you have to leave or need to leave before it may come up, this is the time. I'd ask you if you come forward, identify your name to the clerk, and also what agenda item you're speaking to. Is there anyone wishing to make any public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on. Is there any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next thing up is Waste Management, EAL. Acknowledging my conflict of interest, and I have filed the proper form with the clerk and will abstain from the vote.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
You then me, me, me.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, for the first item for your consideration is a request to approve the preliminary rate resolution for the annual fire rescue services assessment project. This is for fiscal year 18-19, and request permission to advertise for a public hearing to be held August 28th to consider the final annual assessment resolution. Our recommendation is that the rates remain the same as they have been in previous years. This is the annual mechanism that allows us to collect the assessments on the tax roll.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item is number 22, which is a request to award RFQ 018-030, engineering, design, permitting, and CEI services to expand the existing Class 3 solid waste disposal facilities with a new line disposal cell, and approved to begin negotiations with Jones Edmonds. If you'll recall, several months ago, we had a lengthy discussion about the life of site for our current Class 3 facility and the increased volume that we were seeing brought to that facility. We requested direction from the board, and you granted us permission to begin this process. Jones Edmonds was the firm that was the most qualified of those submitting, so we'd like to begin the process of negotiating with them. At this time, we're talking about the engineering, design, permitting, and CEI services. This is prior to any construction, but we wanted to be ready to pull the trigger on construction at the appropriate time. So this would allow us to do that, so we would recommend your approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Excuse me. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I want to take out just a minute to commend Billy McKee and his staff. I mean, the landfill's been working on this for as long as I can remember, and we're finally going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I appreciate their hard work.
I do too. Thank you. Okay, number 23.
Next item is a request, your approval to advertise for a request for proposals for workers' compensation program services. The current contract with workers' comp has expired. We've been operating under that contract, but it is time we move forward with a new contract, and we believe it's appropriate to request proposals to do that and to be
Motion to approve.
transparent and competitive nature.
I'll second that motion, but let me ask, apparently the insurance agency that covers it called my office today and
Yes,
told
ma'am.
one member of my staff that it had not expired, so we are absolutely positive it is
We will,
expired.
before we take any further action, we will be assured that it is.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is a request to award RFP 018-029 for group health insurance to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida, and approve the Florida Blue Group health insurance plan for 2019 fiscal year, representing a 9.25% increase in premiums. While that sounds like a lot, quite frankly, we were expecting mid-double digits, so we think that was a win for the county. Again, although it is a substantial increase, we were expecting a considerably higher increase, so we were pleased with that.
It's my understanding that the rate increase did not change the policy benefits, and
That's
that's
correct.
available. Okay. What's the board's wishes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. All, any public comment? Bob?
Bob Brook, B-R-O-O-K-E. Just a question, Mr. Chairman. Is the increase to be paid by the county, by the employees, or some split between the two?
Right now, it's paid for by the county.
Well, their individual coverage is paid for by the county. If you elect a family coverage, that portion is paid for by the employee. We had calculated the budget for the county to absorb these additional costs. We have had some discussion that we may need to look at that, but this year we're in good shape to do that.
Okay, but the idea is the county will absorb the increase in its entirety
Yes, sir.
without any additional contribution from the employee?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item, actually the next three items are a little bit in line with one another. They are requests from the Health Department. The first request is to utilize our purchasing department to advertise for bids for some renovations to the Health Department. Primarily, they're doing some painting and some other interior work, reconfiguring a couple offices. They intend to pay for those costs out of their budget. They just want to utilize our purchasing capabilities and our purchasing agent to go through the process to make sure it's competitively bid.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Items number 26 and 27, again, are both related to the Health Department. Item number 26 is a request from the Walton County Health Department for county staff to prepare the pad for their modular unit to be installed at the old Pig Daddy's property, which will be the new environmental health office. The DOH will pay the cost of the materials. Let me go ahead and read the next item for you. Is a request from the Health Department staff to provide an estimate of cost to pave the additional parking lot on the old Pig Daddy's property and perform the work, with DOH paying the cost of materials. For both of the projects, the cost of materials is right at $60,000. They intend to pay that. The county will have some use of our forces to do the work, but it's not going to be a taxing or an extreme taxing burden on our workload. We'll be able to work it in and get it done. But primarily, they are paying for all the material costs, so we will have some labor, but not a lot.
Okay. Motion to approve.
Second.
Is that for both of them?
Yes, sir.
We okay to do them both in one motion? Okay.
Okay, motion and you second, Tom?
Mhm.
Motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm in a good mood today, so could I comment on something? I see Harriet Simmons sitting out in the audience. She is the one representing the Health Department today. I won't tell you how old she is, but she has been at the Health Department for as long as I can remember, and she does an outstanding job, and I want to thank her for it.
All right, thank you. I didn't see you there, Harriet.
There's
Welcome.
Harriet.
All right, let's see, under Public Works, number 28.
Is a request to award RFQ 018-021 for the design engineering services of County Road 185, which is Gum Creek Church resurfacing. This is a Scott project, and to approve to begin negotiation with the top-ranked firm, which is DRMP.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is number 29, is a request to award RFQ 015-022 for the CEI services for County Road 185 or Gum Creek Church resurfacing, again, Scott project, and to approve the negotiations with the top-ranked firm Genesis for the CEI services.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is request to award RFQ 018-025, for design services for County Road 0605. This is a scrap project, and then to approve to begin negotiation with the top-ranked firm, which was DRMP.
What road is 0605?
One south of Paxton off 331 comes down towards Caney Creek.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion is second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item, number 31, is a request approval for Public Works to move forward with competitively bidding the various contracts necessary to construct Bay Grove project upon completion of the final design documents and specifications. We've moved forward to get the design and specs done for the project. What we're requesting is the ability that once they're completed, to get them on the street and keep that project moving as fast as we possibly can. So this is somewhat of a blanket approval that as the steps and the phases become available to put into the process, we'll get them into the competitive bid process and move them forward. And certainly bring back the results of those for your approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion second. Any public comment? Yes, ma'am. Next item. Okay.
Hannah Brown. First of all, I would like to thank all of y'all for opening the opportunity to the park. I've been talking to many of y'all about the personal naming of it. Each one of you should have received my letter discussing the name after Grady Brown, my grandfather. If you haven't, please let me know, and I have extras. The reason why I've pursued this name is because my grandfather was known for fishing and wading in the water at the same area every day. Clyde B. Wells was a lifelong resident of Walton County resident of Walton County, veteran of the Korean War, an assistant state attorney, and a circuit judge. Thomas Pilcher was also a lifelong resident. He patrolled the Choctawhatchee Bay for the Florida Department of Conservation and was a great influence on creating a deep boat ramp for vessels along the causeway. Papa wasn't a doctor, a lawyer, or a lifesaver, but he was an amazing teacher to many. Any stranger that he met at the bay wasn't a stranger when they left. He taught the poor to supply for their family and help put fish on the table when in need. He was a role model to many and the best father and papa around. Like I said, he wasn't a doctor. He wasn't any type of law enforcement, a lawyer, or a judge. He was a humble man that always made sure that he supported his family. He made sure that others knew how to fish in case they were going through rough financial times. And he was known by so many for that. He was a papa with so many stories to tell, the best advice giver, and a strong believer in Christ. So with this being said, I was wondering if the approval of the park name would be any mention tonight. And I also wanted to refresh your name about Grady Brown. I've prayed about this approval, and it would be an honor for me and my family to make this happen, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, as far as the naming of the park, it's not on the agenda for discussion or action today. So it'll be at some future date when we're not sure yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item, Commissioners, is number 32, which is a request your approval to authorize the clerk of courts to collect on Ridgewalk LLC letter of credit for Ridgewalk PUD in the amount of $59,334 before the expiration date, which is July 14 of 2018.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second discussion. Wasn't there some indication that they may go ahead and have another one by the 14th?
There was, Matt, you,
Yes, sir.
okay.
What was the name?
My name's Matthew Parker. I'm the managing member of Ridgewalk LLC.
Okay.
We've been working with your staff, Buddy Wright and Ms. Janice Floyd, to get a new letter of credit instituted and to replace the existing one that's going to expire on Saturday. That swap is going to happen on Friday. So if I would like to just request that the motion be revised to say that the clerk of courts is authorized to collect only if a new letter of credit is not in place prior to the expiration of the old one.
I think we can modify the motion. All right, you know what,
I
is it?
will-
Modify it.
yes.
It will be collected on if we haven't got the new one to take its place
Yes, sir, and that's gonna happen on Friday.
on Friday.
The new letter's sitting on his desk, we just have to swap it out. Thank you all
All
very
right,
much.
thank you. Tony, you modify your second. Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. That's all we have this time.
All right. TDC, Brian, you handling this?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. Brian Kellenberger, Director of Beach Operations. Item number 33, this is request approval for staff to apply for a variance for the new Miramar Regional Beach Access. This is a variance to the front setback on that property. We're tearing down a existing structure and building a new restroom structure, and we need to set it closer to the right-of-way than is allowed by the code. So we'll be asking for a variance for that. Existing structure is on the right-of-way right now. Our new structure will be about 5 feet off the right-of-way.
Okay, and I understand the primary reason for that is because of DEP on permitting the bathroom, et cetera, down there.
Correct. So
They
we have a
wanted it
coastal
further
construction-
away.
Right, they want us as far landward as we can be, and so that's the main reason for pushing it up against the road right-of-way.
Okay, and just a sidebar to that, the next item, which was pulled from the agenda, was that primarily at my request, because the two designs that were presented or shown to us, one of them was right at the dune, the other one was up near the bike path, and I encouraged them to research that further, because there's no need in us maybe approving the one down by the beach, and then DEP throws a wrench into it, and we gotta go
Correct.
through this thing
We've
again.
asked our engineer to work on that for us. We'll have an answer back in the near future.
Okay. All right, so right now is for y'all to apply for a variance.
Yes, sir, for
Okay.
the front setback.
Right. All right, what's council?
Motion to approve.
Second,
You gonna make it?
barely.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any public comment? I don't see any. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
All right, number 34 was pulled, so that's found out about.
Just do a quick update.
Okay.
So just wanted to give you an update on May TDT numbers. We were up 2.78%, May over 18 versus 17. We had a total of $2,279,693.96 that were collected. And year over year, we are up 6.42% for a total of $10,241,543.21. So collections are still good. We are just continuing, obviously, to monitor that. Been talking to some bed tax collectors. Obviously, you know, with what's going on our beaches, I think everything is still good. So we'll just kind of see how things go for the rest of the summer.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
Any questions? Thank you, Jay.
Great, thank you.
All right. Next up, we have a public hearing to request to approve and authorize the chair sign a resolution bringing forward 1.902666660 and TDC fund reserved for the purchase of land.
Motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Is there any public comment? Okay. We'll close the public hearing. take
Motion to
place.
close public hearing.
Second.
No, we have to vote in it. Yeah, motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Noyes, it's number 37.
Commissioners, as you can see from your agenda items, we've received a number of requests from some beachfront property owners asking us to, well, not asking, but demanding that we cease crossing their property for garbage collection on the beach. As you know, the TDC has provided a service for a number of years to collect garbage, not just on our public beaches, but also on private beaches where we have bed tax collectors. And this is a program that we've, again, had for a very large, a great number of years. Never had any issues with it until recently. But unfortunately, we have received these letters, and where these property owners are located, it would greatly impact our ability to pick up trash on private property. So I've been working with Brian, and I think Brian's here, and he might have some more information for you. But Brian and I have been working closely together, trying to deal with this issue. But unfortunately, we're at a point now where we're likely going to have to suspend collection of garbage on private property. And we wanted to discuss that with you, and also discuss with you some options for us to continue garbage collection at our neighborhood beach accesses.
SIDS
Yes,
for
sir.
the public. This was brought, or these demand letters came from 4 attorneys
Yes.
representing.
Yes, sir. And that information, it's attached to your agenda. I can give you the names of the owners if you would like.
I would like them read.
Sure. So we've received requests from Paradise by the Sea, which is a subdivision, James and Nina Hayden, Seaside Town Council, Vizcaya Homeowners Association, Grand Dunes Condo Owners Association, the Village of White Cliffs Owners Association, Lionel and Tammy Alford, Emmett and Linda Hildreth, the Stanley Smith Management Trust, C. Finley McCrae and F. McCrae Investments LLC, KI Florida Properties LLC, CT Fitzpatrick, Douglas and Shelley Bush, John and Lisa Bauschy, Sadie's Hideaway LLC, St. John's Florida Properties LLC, and Southwinds Condominiums. And those property owners and the attorneys that represent them and the location of those properties are in your agenda packet.
Okay, and they demanded that we not transverse anymore to pick up the garbage that's
Yeah,
along there.
Right. Some of them requested that we cease collecting trash on their property, which is fine. The trash collection that we've been providing is a voluntary service that we provide to all bed tax collectors. That's not the issue. The issue is our ability to cross their property to pick up trash for everyone else who would still like us to. And unfortunately, because of our limited access onto the beach, it will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for us to avoid these properties and continue collecting trash on the private properties that still want to participate.
But we've also got a couple of emails stating that they have backed off of that, some of the
Right.
homeowner individuals.
Right. So Seaside Town Council actually rescinded their request, and you have that information. Some of the attorneys got back to me and, expressed some willingness, I guess, to come up with certain concessions to allow us to continue crossing their beach. Unfortunately, most of the attorneys wanted us to indemnify their clients for crossing the beach, and that's just something that we can't do. And unfortunately, with each of these property owners asking for different demands, it puts our staff in a very difficult position. You know, the guys who go out and clean our beach every day, they do a wonderful job, and for us to ask them to, deal with this ever-changing situation is just really not fair, because some property owners may be okay with it, some not. Some would have certain demands, others wouldn't, and it would just be too much to ask of them in a
Yeah.
lot of cases.
One letter
Never-
actually specified that Walton County Sheriff's Office protect their private property rights by arresting them for trespassing.
And it's just a situation that I don't know that we want to put our staff in.
And didn't one of them request that we pick up their garbage, but then rake the beach from the tire mark? Come on. I mean, really.
Well, to me, they come in here and they demanded that we not do this. And now all of a sudden, when their garbage is gonna pile up out there, they want us to come up and meet some hoops that they have put out in front of us and come back and collect it. Now, you can't have your cake and eat it too. That's one thing's gotta go. Now, if we're gonna, some of the things that Brian has put in here is gonna cost the county money.
Yes,
If
sir.
we're looking at the dumpsters or whatever else, it's spot dumpsters here and there, and the equipment to dump them and all that good stuff, you're looking at several $100,000.
Yeah,
Easy.
haven't figured it up, but you're probably correct. It could easily get up there pretty high.
Well, then maybe we ought to pass that on to these homeowners if they want us to do that, let them pay for the equipment. I mean, we're just having a hard time with this process.
Yes, sir, I agree. I believe the trash collection and beach code enforcement are valuable municipal functions on the beach.
Yeah.
By prohibiting us from crossing property, like I say, we're fine with garbage collection on not collecting on their property, but it affects properties to the east and west of them, depending on their relationship to drive-on accesses in coastal Dune Lake outfalls.
Well, Mr. I'm sorry, Brian.
I was gonna say, total, we have about 670 bags. There's about a little over 300 collection stations. Some of those are 2-bag holders, some are 4-bag holders. What we've shown now on this map, this is a GIS map, we have all of our garbage collection stations mapped, and we were able to fairly easily ascertain what was gonna be compromised. Of the private collection garbage stations, about 148 locations will be compromised. That represents about 48% of the garbage. Last year, we collected a little over 72,000 bags of garbage off the beach. So that's about, after you take out the public beaches, you're talking about 30% of the garbage not coming off the beach. A lot of garbage that somebody will have to manage. I mean, it can't back up. I mean, one of the main comments we get at beach operations from people that take the time to contact us to let us know what we're doing good is that our beaches are clean. By and far, when they go to vacation destinations, our beaches are clean. And by not being able to do this, as you can see, we've got it blocked off in different colors. But the star represents a location that was included in the list, and then the block headed east or west is the amount of area that's affected. So as you go down the beach, there's really 3 major locations where large lengths of beach are compromised, and there's some other smaller sections. I did offer up a few solutions. Once again, they're not efficient, so that means more personnel and probably more equipment. It also means, one of the solutions is collecting garbage from the top side. That is the most inefficient way to collect garbage off the beach, because you have to walk down boardwalks to get it. You got to walk back up and carrying garbage. We'd have to create some parking spaces, service parking areas at the top of a lot of the neighborhood beach, or really all of the neighborhood beach accesses. Those are our ones that are meant to walk or ride a bike to. And a lot of the right-of-way adjacent to these neighborhood beach accesses is already compromised by encroachment in the form of garbage cans. Sometimes there's driveways. Driveways take up the whole width of the property. So I'm not sure if that's a viable solution or not. Collecting topside from private property would require us to get access to the upland portion of the property, more than likely get through security gates on the property and at the top of the boardwalk. We would have to have some kind of universal code that would allow us. We can't be expected to remember 100 different codes to get through gates. There's a possibility that private owners could collect their garbage and put them in a central location on their property, and we would collect it much like a waste management type service. But if we were going to do that, we would just hire waste management to do it. And add it to their contract or bid it out for a service. There's also the possibility of just discontinuing the garbage and letting the private property owners handle it themselves. One of the property owners that rescinded their letter quickly realized that I don't have the logistical means to handle that amount of garbage. One thing that I had not thought of is the wear and tear and damage to the boardwalks of carrying wet garbage up and down the boardwalk. Most of those boardwalks are pretty nice. If you tote garbage up and down them all day, they get a little, not as nice. And then the fourth one, which would require, of course, some legal interpretation and some sort of resolution by the board, is recognize that it is a valuable and necessary function, and disregard the letters or let the owners know that we're going to continue. That would probably result in litigation and,
Yeah.
of course, put our people in position to be arrested. And so, once again, that's, I like to present solutions, but it's up to y'all
Yes.
to make a decision on what you'd like to do.
And the position we're put in is obviously an
Yeah.
unfortunate one, and we're trying to work through it as best we can.
Yeah.
But
So-
at this point, probably the safest thing for us to do is to suspend the collection on private property.
Mr. Chairman, could I please say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You know what? I take my garbage to the street. I put it in a can, and I take it to the street once a week because I know Waste Management is going to come by. If these people don't want us on their property, I suggest they pick up their own garbage and haul it to the street. I imagine Waste Management picks up down here, once or twice a week, especially during the summer, twice during the summer. Let them get their own garbage to the street like everybody else in Walton County does. If they don't want us doing this free service for them, then they will have to take responsibility. Because I think the next thing that's going to happen is DEP is going to find about all this trash they're piling up, and DEP may visit some of these folks. And I'm sure their neighbors, when they realize we can't pick up their garbage because of them, So, but at this point, I'm sorry, I say let them pick up their own garbage.
All right, Sid, if I ain't mistaken, we got an email that basically they thought by us continuing to pick up the trash on the beach, that it was somehow going to be used towards the customary use issue. I think
And I've made that clear to all the attorneys that I've spoken with, that the fact that we collect garbage on the beach is not, evidence that we were going to use in support of customary use. And, if you guys direct me to continue to work with those attorneys, I can do that. My concern, though, at this point is that we're going to get more letters in, and it's going to be a piecemeal approach, and each property would be different. And we're in the position where we're putting our staff in a really difficult place to try to have to navigate this.
We don't need to do that to our staff. We just don't need to do it.
So, you're advocating that during these locations he identified on here, that we would cease picking up trash on those beaches?
Oh.
Is that what you're saying?
Just a second, Mr. Chairman. If maybe I misunderstood.
It is on.
We're going to, in my hearing what I'm hearing, we're going to have to suspend picking up trash everywhere on the beach because we can't cross your property to get to her property.
We at least have to stop where these property owners have submitted their requests, but probably the safest thing to do would be to phase out collection on all private property.
Okay, so we would still pick it up at our
Regional
regionals
and
and
neighborhoods.
with the neighborhoods.
Right.
Other than that, you're on your own.
Do we need a motion to that effect?
This is something that we brought to you guys to educate you and educate members of the public. If you want to make a motion to that effect, that would probably be helpful or give us clear direction about how to go forward.
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any public comment? I knew that was going to come on. I'm going to try and go on this right-hand side and then work my way over to here. So if you're behind the speaker, I'm going to have a hard time seeing you if you raise your hand. So move one side or the other. Go ahead.
Lori Reichenbach, R-E-I-C-H-E-N-B-A-C-H. Is there not some sort of public domain that the county can take control and continue to deal with the trash issue? This trash pileup is already a problem for many volunteers who assist the county and cannot leave the wet sand. The garbage is piling up even with garbage pickup current. The turtles, the water, the plastic in the water. Some homeowners don't actually live on their property, and they have tourists there who do a very poor job in many instances of picking up trash in general, much less leaving it to pile up in a bag that is never brought to the curb on 30A. The more trash that comes to the curb on 30A, the more waste management trucks we have, the bigger parking and traffic issues that we have, the flow of traffic will be worse. Our county is at war. And this is a terrible situation, and they may think this won't work against customary use, but this is all in your hands, because now we are dealing with customary use and those who will not and refuse to allow it on their property. This just makes everybody livid. Tourists are claiming they will not be returning. The citizens of this county can't find a spot on the beach. I'm just rambling. So I'm asking you to do whatever legal you have to do to keep Brian and his crew. Not to mention, it's then going to be code enforcement. And we already have behaviors on the beach that require code enforcement. And if they can't get down there, we are going to have anarchy. Please keep this team on the beach, whatever legal maneuvering you have to do. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Let's see, Bob, yeah.
Bob Brooke, B-R-O-O-K-E. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. I'm a bit dismayed by what I've heard. I'm sorry to say that I think this is just a excellent example of a Pandora's box that you've opened with customary use. This is just one of the unintended consequences that I'm sure nobody thought about when you started this whole process. And I think it was rather arbitrary, because I don't think you really looked at viable alternatives to customary use. I'm also dismayed because I think very highly of Commissioner Commander, and the previous speaker mentioned the war that's going on here, and her comments seemed to say, let the people in the public fight it out. I think that's a horrible suggestion. So I think as the previous speaker said, this all depends on you. It's something that's been caused by the Board of County Commissioners unnecessarily, in my opinion, and I'm dismayed to see the state the counties come to over this issue. Thank you.
All right, let's see. Bill, hang on a minute. I think there was some that was in the back.
Guy all the way in the back with a beard.
Okay, in the back with the beard. Come on up, and Bill right after him.
Corey May, C-O-R-Y-M-A-Y-S, Walton County resident. I've been doing a lot of research about this ordinance use that we've been having, this whole issue. And it seems like they just kind of wanted to make it to where the beaches are theirs entirely, except for when it comes to emergencies. From what I've read is they're wanting us to completely remove all of our services that we can offer to them for free. Is that right?
Basically, yes.
Basically make it to where it's theirs, 200 feet from what line on their house.
It depends on what size, how size the lot is.
Okay. So in other words, what happens if a hurricane comes through? Are they going to have us in the county area?
Well, sir, I'll answer that right now. Several years ago, we were set up. We had federal money, we had state money, we had our money to renourish the beaches down there on the south end. And this room filled up, half again as many people's in here right now. Don't want you to renourish the beach and all that. And I don't know how many times I heard, if it blows out, goes away, I will pay for it. So my position is, if that's the way you felt back then and you lose it, you lose it. Get your pocketbook out and fix it. Because I was told by more than one or two or three during that hearing, we don't want you to touch it.
Standing right where you are.
Well, I can tell you this much, Chairman, that many people up in northern part of the Walton County fully support your guys' decision. If they want us to pull away from whatever they want us to do, pull away. They want to own the beach, let them own the beach. Let them do their own thing down there. But until when it comes to a major disaster that happen and that property line does shrink away, where they have to renourish it and everything, they'll be the first ones to come and knocking at our door.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Bill.
Couldn't see him over there.
Bill Fletcher, F-L-E-T-C-H-E-R. I'm can't understand why you wouldn't want trash taken off your beach, but if they made that decision, I guess they've made it. But I'm wondering, Sydney, has anybody talked to the DEP? I mean, I think they're leading with their chin here in terms of being able to keep you off that beach. You're talking about environmental issues, safety issues, the turtles. I think we could, go ahead.
I've had some conversations actually today with one of the attorneys at DEP. And unfortunately, there's no rules in place, no DEP rules in place that would allow us to cross the property without the beachfront property owner's permission. Now, if trash collection backs up and there's a nuisance, at some point we may be able to step in, but unfortunately, we can't do it proactively.
What about federal regulations on endangered species, the turtles? I mean, that definitely is going to be an impediment to the turtle nesting program.
Right, so those would, you know, if there were a take of an endangered species, the beachfront property owner would be on the hook for that if it resulted from the pileup of trash.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Bill, just real quick, we've had conversations with DEP and the governor's office. So it's not something we're taking lightly, but the law is the law. And if we're not allowed to cross someone's property, then there's not a whole lot we can do until something is clarified for us by the state or the federal government.
Thank you. I'm going to talk to a few of these beachfront owners and get the rationale. I don't know why you would want trash on your beach. Thank you.
Okay, let me go on around. Yes, sir, with your hand up. Ma'am, you're right behind you.
My name is Nick Lembo, L-E-M-B-O. And I just wanted to make the county commissioners aware of the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Committee recommendations for the best management practices for operating any vehicles on the beach. Again, this is the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission on the best management practices for operating vehicles on the beach. It tells us how to drive on the beach. And it goes through very clearly, May through October is considered the sea turtle season. However, some species of sea turtles have been known to nest as early as February, and hatchlings can emerge from their nest as late as the midwinter months. Beach nesting birds may be active from mid-February through the end of August. And this is the important part. This, therefore, it is best to avoid beach driving whenever feasible, and critical that everyone authorized to operate a vehicle on the beach, any vehicle, during these periods of the year, take the following precautions. So this is the state's recommendations for driving on the beach. And it specifically says, enter the beach at only designated access points and proceed directly to the hard-packed sand near or below the mean high water line. Avoiding driving on the upper beach whenever possible, and never drive on the dunes or over beach vegetation. So a potential solution for this, which would allow Walton County to actually follow the state's recommendations on driving, which are completely different. The trucks go all over the dry sand of the beach all year, May, October, through whatever, is the potential that the garbage trucks, as recommended by the county, the Fish and Wildlife Commission, those trucks gain direct access to the mean high water line, and they drive along the wet, sandy portion of the beach. It's not going to interfere with the property owners. They're not going to go against that, and it's going to allow the turtles to nest. It's going to be a little bit more of a walk for the garbage picker to go up in that area, but it'll allow Walton County to follow the Wildlife Commission's recommendations and potentially avoid this mess that potentially could happen. So I would strongly advise you to advise your garbage collection trucks to follow these rules. They pick up garbage early in the morning before there's anybody on the beach and do their thing along the mean high water line, and everybody will be happy. Thank you very much.
All right. Brian, you got any comments to that?
Yes, sir. I appreciate Dr. Lanko's comments there. We send all of our people that work on the beach to Shorebird, FWC Shorebird and Marine Turtle Training to identify species, tracks, habitats. We would like to follow all those practices, and we try to whenever we can. Simple fact is that during the turtle season, there's also 3.8 million visitors to our beach, and the Mean High water line is impossible to drive down. In fact, we have a hard time driving down the beach past about 10:30 or 11 o'clock because the beach fills up with people and beach equipment. At night, we use amber lights on our trucks per the FWC guidelines for acceptable wavelengths. And we do drive the rack line at night. Code enforcement, that's standard operating procedure because it's easier at night. Not as many people on the beach set up. So, the reality is that there's more on our beach than marine wildlife and shorebirds. And there's a lot of other people that want to use that beach all at the same time. We feel like that the garbage and code enforcement is a very valuable municipal function that is working towards the same goal of protecting critical habitat and endangered species. And at some point, everybody has to realize there has to be an equilibrium of use on that beach. So appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Chairman, the way I understand it is not only they're objecting to the trucks, but I'm driving the truck down there. I got to get, and go up on their property to get the garbage, and they're against that too. They don't want our garbage collector people to collect the garbage. It's not just the truck.
Okay.
Right?
Ma'am, back there.
My name is Barbara Morano. I understand you've already have a motion, but I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask what Sydney brought up, is to go back to these attorneys. What's happening is these attorneys have us by our throat. The beachfront owners who are not upset with the idea of getting the garbage collected have just been thrown off the table. Most of them don't live here, and it's daily pickup that Brian's people pick up. It's daily, it's not weekly, it's not twice a week. So I'm not hearing from those beachfront property owners who pay bed tax. We've just wiped them off the table. That's one group. The next group is the public who uses the public beaches. Daily, those garbage pails are overflowing. I can't believe Brian is going to send down, or he has to, send down people down the boardwalk, pick up paper trash bags which are going to burst, so he'll have to bring pails down there, carry them up daily, bring these big trucks in to Ed Walleen, Gulfview Heights, all the other regional accesses. We can't ask our people to do this. It's a health and safety issue. We're being strangled by a handful of lawyers, strangled by a handful of people that are strangling us, the people who are using the public beaches. I am out there. I'm also volunteering. I won't go into that. But when I call code enforcement now against things that I see on the public beach, we're helping you in the county. Code cannot come out and take care of those issues. The tents now are at the water level. You've already asked people to have the tents on the first third of the beach. They're not there. The beach has become unbelievable. And when people cannot set up because of all the vendors, they're actually going on private property. They're going on private property and aggravating the beachfront homeowners because code can't get down there and tell them to do the right thing. You're opening up a Pandora's box by allowing this handful of lawyers. It's going to get worse just because of what they want us to do right now at this moment. I'm asking you to go back, talk to some of those lawyers, and I agree, Commissioner Anderson, you said you thought about this, you've called some of the people, call some more people and find out and get the legal issues. We can't allow them to do this to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill,
Yeah.
could you answer that, Sydney?
Well, sure. So, I did have conversations with the attorneys who sent me those letters, but unfortunately the attorneys were wanting either us to enter into license agreements or agree to terms where we would indemnify those beachfront property owners, and that's just something that I can't advise us to do. Now, I don't mind going back to them and seeing if they would be willing to drop that. And I will certainly do that, and hopefully they would agree to that, but if not, we can't indemnify the beachfront property owners. And it doesn't really make sense to. We've been doing this garbage collection for almost 20 years. We've never had any claims, nothing. So there's no reason to indemnify the beachfront property owners. And we can't do that because it would waive our sovereign immunity. So I don't mind going back to them and seeing if that's the option. Of course, you know, the issue that we're having is we may get more letters, and each of the beachfront property owners may have individual demands, and it may not be tenable for us to work out an agreement. But if you guys direct me to do that, I will certainly do that.
Well, I thought maybe, and you tell me, I could modify my motion to say, let's stop now until you talk to the, and not collect anymore, and which will give you 2 weeks to talk to the lawyers. And I know the meeting is up in the Funiac, but the road runs both ways, for us to see if you can reach some kind of agreement. But you're right, we can't do something for Tony but not do something for Bill. I mean, these people on the beach, they can't say, okay, let's see, number 42 says we can do so. I mean, it sounds good, but it's not practical. But
Right.
If that would help my motion, say, let's suspend for now until you have a chance to talk with and bring us back a report, then I will modify that motion.
And we could, Brian, is it practical, I guess, to suspend the areas that are impacted by the letters that we've received?
Yes.
Well, I would suggest that whatever we do, we notify the people that have, or acknowledge the letters we have received, request, an opportunity to speak with them to fully explain the impacts. And if they decide not to move off the decision they've made now, still request some time. We have to give the people that are affected that have not notified us to stop some time to figure out how to get the garbage off the beach.
Yeah, but we've got 7 or 8, whatever number it is, that has gave us notice. How
Right.
many of them HOAs that everybody in that HOA even knows about this action because they're off in Kentucky or some other place?
That'd be, a question for Sydney. She's the one that's in direct contact with the other legal representation for these people. But like I said, I think there is some, we ought to take the opportunity to give them a chance to fully understand what the impacts are. And then, like I say, in the absence of them changing their minds, we still need a couple of weeks to notify the affected property owners. Because if we just stop collecting garbage on the beach, we're going to have a nightmare down there. 72,000 bags last year, so 30% of that is a lot of garbage that piles up quickly.
Well,
Another question. So we stop, okay, we give it time, you're gonna continue to collect garbage, and they're gonna immediately sue us, right?
I'm not sure what they'll do. That's, once
So I will
again,
work with Brian,
Yeah.
obviously.
Okay.
I'm not gonna put us in a position, or our staff in a position
Yeah.
where they would be liable for trespass.
Could you bring it back to us in 2 weeks?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then I will rescind my motion.
I'll rescind a second, but I've got a question for you both. You said continue to pick up the garbage, and I'm all for that. I think the garbage needs to get off the beach every day. But what happens if your guys get stopped and arrested for trespassing?
we've instructed all of our people. So trespassing requires a couple of things. One is, intent. The sheriff's office, in the lack of criminal intent, they would have to give you a notice of your trespassing and give you opportunity to get off the beach. All right, if that happens, we've instructed all of our people, apply professional courteous. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm doing the duty I've been asked to do. If you'll give me a few minutes, I'll get my vehicle off your property.
Well, and then that stops the beaches to pick up until you can get to the next.
Yes, sir. I would hope that we could make contact with this other legal representatives here in a quick manner and explain our situation, and that there would be some understanding. When there's a cease and desist, I would like to think that there is some understanding on their part of what the impacts are and what the logistical consequences are.
Well, Brian, I would agree with you, and once if the discussion started happening about not picking it up anymore, then we start getting an email saying, oh, well, I'm okay with you coming across my property. And I don't know how much information was passed on for the legal counsel of these respective HOAs. There was one HOA member in Seaside that called me, and he was upset as all get out that their HOA took this action to not pick up, I don't think they rescinded that request, but.
They did.
Well,
I would
that's just
think-
it.
Yeah, I would think now that this has, gotten out into the community through various channels, people are understanding it better, making their attitudes known. And so I think this is the best route. Let's,
Brian, sorry to interrupt. How long would it take you to, I guess, pick up the trash receptacles? What's a feasible time frame for that, to notify the bed tax collectors to pick up the?
well, it won't take us but, a day to get the garbage cans
Right,
off the
but to
properties we
notify
need.
the property
So to
owners.
notify them, we would, send certified mail because a lot of the owners are absentee owners. A lot of the owners are LLCs. First you got to figure out, who the managing member is and all that. 2 weeks at a minimum of getting notification to them. And then I don't know how long it would take the affected property owners to be able to then, make some sort of move to be able to collect that garbage. In some locations, we're talking about 2 bags a day. In some locations, we're talking, depending on the type of property, resort property, condominium, or single-family dwelling, it could be as many as 32 bags a day.
So
It's-
what we could do, if you guys are okay with it, is I could contact these attorneys and say that within a month, we are going to cease trash collection for all of the property owners that are affected by your request, but ask them to, consider some concession and work something
Right.
out with me, and I could bring that back to you before the month timeline is up.
Okay.
Are you gonna contact the lawyers or the property owners?
I've got to contact the lawyers, unfortunately.
In the meantime, they'll be getting more and more people on their side because that's what they do.
Yeah.
Present company and excluded from the lawyer fees, but I agree with Ms. Moreno. This is, I'm not sure the homeowners understand the effect of what this is going to cause. But, I don't want to damage too many of my lawyer friends, but my opinion of them goes down daily, so.
Well, and another thing about, Tony, about the discussion we're having right now, maybe some of the people, Viscaya's in my head, so I'll say Viscaya, maybe they don't know what their homeowners association did. There's something called email and YouTube and whatever out there. All you folks that don't want this, put it out there and let them find out about it, and we might see how many show up and say, hey, we don't, or even contact their homeowners association. Let's let the public do some fighting for us on this too.
Okay, I see 2 more hands, and then we'll close public comment. Come forward.
John Reichenbach, R-E-I-C-H-E-M-B-A-C-H. I'm not going to tell you guys what to do because you had plenty of advice, but I think the right thing to do would be to try to call their bluff and say, no, we're going to continue the activities the way we've done it for 20 years. And if you people want to fight us and sue us, come on, because I think you're going to get so many people on your side, and there'll be a community uprising. So I just would urge you to do the right thing and just say no. Thank you.
Ms. Bowman.
Coy Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N. What this last guy said is exactly what you want. You want everybody to get in an uproar against this ordinance because you're actually against it. This is because you don't recognize the law that Florida just passed. Florida's statute 631 states that private property lines end at the vegetation. So you, as the county, recognize these surveys that these people have that say they own the white sand, which aren't actually legal surveys because they were all illegally created back in the 50s. So you want everybody to think that the ordinance that the state of Florida passed is this bad thing that doesn't let people on the beach. when really it does. You are trying to get everybody against it. So this is just one of those manipulations of society that allows you to force an issue for something that you say you're against, but you're really for. Because you want to recognize private property, private ownership of the white sand, so that people like Dave Roshkob can build a bar on the beach. He's already built the wood floor for it and has water pipes going down on the sand. And the way he got away with that is by saying that he owned the white sand. So this is how you have forced, actually, everybody in town thinks they're fighting for one thing, they're actually fighting for the opposite, because you don't recognize Florida law as legal. You don't think you have to obey the state of Florida. Secondly, I think it's kind of funny that after collecting the garbage for 20 years, all of a sudden these people are complaining about it. And then the third thing about that is these are garbage cans that aren't at the public accesses, right? They're just along the beach. Right, okay, so these are garbage cans that are provided for free by taxpayer money. But they're only really servicing the renters of the private homes. They're not really servicing the public, except for those few people that walk a couple of miles down from a public access. So really, these private homeowners have been profiting off of taxpayer-provided service. So I say that you should just get rid of the cans and make there a fine for leaving garbage on the beach, the same way there's a fine for having glass on the beach or having a dog without a permit. So if you make it a fine, like $100 if you leave a can or a plastic something on the beach, then I think the tourists would pick up their own garbage in a little bag like we used to do before the county came down here and said they would take care of us. We took a garbage bag with us to the beach. If they can haul all that garbage down there on the beach for their day, then they can haul it all back off. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, one would think.
Okay, we got a motion and a second on the floor.
Well, I think it was rescinded.
You recalled it?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So,
But then,
if you guys are okay, I'm okay with direction from you. If you're all right with me reaching out to the property, or to the attorneys, telling them that we're gonna cease collection within 30 days to give us that amount of time to contact everyone and let them know about this, and then see if there's any concessions that we can work out in the meantime, and I can bring that back to you on the 24th.
I'm of the opinion that we ought to make a motion in a second to put that in writing.
Okay.
That they have 30 days to try and work with us and get this issue settled. If not, we will discontinue the garbage collection in those areas. Now, that's.
Well, the problem we have is when the last part of your statement, in my opinion, is that it's not just in those areas that's gonna be affected.
Well, that's true.
If I can't cross Miss Laurie's beach to get to Sydney's beach, I can't collect Sydney's garbage.
Right, and
So-
that's who we need to notify.
Everything except that last statement I agree with, and I'll make that motion saying we will give them 30 days in writing and give you time to work with them. And I can't tell the public what to do, but anybody that knows anybody that's on this list, please contact them if you so choose. But my thing is, it needs to be in writing. They need a warning that this is going to happen. And unfortunately, for the people on the beach that don't care if we cross their property, it's going to cost them too if they don't do it. Because our guys are not gonna know whose property to cross, who's not, and the more people we get in there, the worse it's gonna get. So let's give ourselves 30 days with a written letter to all the attorneys, asking them to please work with us so that we do not have to suspend trash pickup on the beach.
I'll second that motion. I'm sorry, we're in discussion.
We're in discussion there.
Yeah. I'll second that motion.
Okay.
What he just said.
What he just said.
Whatever, yeah.
I
Kim,
got
did you get that?
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any public comment concerning the motion? Well, I can't hear you. Come on up here, please. State your name to the clerk.
Yes, my name is Michelle Phillips. I was wondering if it would be possible to get a list of the people that are
Yes, ma'am.
in disagreement with this.
Yeah, so it's on the county website. If you'd like, whenever we take a break, I can show you how to access that information.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, Sid, I think you got one more thing on Vecchio.
Yes, this is a request to advertise and hold an executive session in Vecchio versus Walton County. I would ask that we do that at our next board meeting.
In Definiak.
Yes. So we can do it after the board meeting if you guys are okay with that.
Okay. What's the board's wishes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, that's a motion and a second to hold an executive session in Definiak on
The 24th?
24th of July in reference to Vecchio and Walton County. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is that it, Ms. Sid?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Sarah, you got anything to add?
No, sir.
All right.
I've run my mouth enough.
Tony?
Yes, and I'm sure the rest of you commissioners got the same letter I did. Black Creek Lodge is, offered the county an opportunity to look into buying that piece of property. It would be a tremendous addition to us, but of course, it all depends on the price, and I would like to, with the board's approval, direct staff to look into this and see what's needed to be done, or if we can do it.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Motion second. That camp is in my district over southwest, east of Freeport. If you haven't been there, it would make a nice spot for maybe some primitive camping, and there's some structures on there, so if it's possible.
There's a ramp too, doesn't it? I mean, a
It's
boat
got a
ramp, it
boat
has
ramp, you can
everything.
put
Yeah.
about two
Plenty
at
of
a time.
parking, too.
Yeah, there's supposed to be plenty of parking, but anyway. Okay.
Yeah, don't we want appraisals?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You want to make that part of the motion?
I'll make it part of the motion.
Okay, second, yes.
Okay, any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. I don't have anything. Okay, we're gonna take about a 15-minute break. We've got some things to take care of. All right, let's see where we are. We got a citizen's request, Maria Milton. Is she here or?
Good evening. I'm Maria Milton, M-I-L-T-O-N.
Hang on a minute, Ms. Milton. I don't see our clerk. You gotta find her so we can get the record. Let me know, Kim, when you're ready. Okay. We'll go ahead and, so she can put it in, would come to order, whatever time you're using. And this is Miss Marie Milton on the citizen's request. Miss Milton.
Yes, I am speaking on behalf of the Flowers View Industrial Inc. And when we asked about being on the agenda, there were two issues that we told the county that we needed the commissioners to address. Now, the first and foremost issue, the county was getting ready to sell an acre of the community's property at public auction on July 25th because of the non-payment of these taxes from which we're exempt. That has been taken care of. But we still told the agenda here, people, that we needed the county to follow through on its promise that it made in 2008 to straighten out the property description that is causing this error. The acre in question was initially recorded wrong back in the county in 1948, and then we met with the county commissioners. That was supposed to be changed. That has not been changed. And so the way the land is described, the acre where the community center is described as being an adjacent acre. People are buying this adjacent acre and laying claim to our acre. We asked the county to straighten that out. They were supposed to be straightening it out. I do have minutes as they pertain to us from the October and November 2008 meeting, where the county did say that it was going to be changed. Now, Mike Burke, who was the county attorney during that time, told the county commissioners that those property descriptions had been transposed, and the county had said that they were going to change that so that we won't keep having this same issue. And until the county does straighten this error, then that means that we're going to continue to have this same problem. And if the county does straighten this error, then that would resolve this issue once and for all.
Okay. Sid?
Yes, sir. Ms. Milton, I wasn't here back in 2008, but I do know that the county attorney's office, I guess, looked into this, and we do have a file on record. If it's okay with the board, I'll go and pull that file and see if I can get some more information, and if I could just be in contact with you. And I'll have to look at it. It's been a while since I have looked at it, but I think that there is an error in one of the legal descriptions, and that's how this keeps getting messed up. It may not be something that
As I understand, the property descriptions have been transposed. And so are you saying that you're going to straighten that error? And if you are, then what kind of time can we expect that be done?
Well, it may not be something that we can correct, but it could be something that I could try to get a lawyer to help you guys with. That might be an option.
Wait a minute, it's the county's error. The county made the error back in 1948 where they transposed these property descriptions.
Okay.
And then they told us in 2008, if you'll check the November 10, 2008 meeting, the county assured us that they were going to make this change, and it still hasn't been made.
Okay, well, if you guys will let me look into it, and I'll be in touch with you, Ms. Milton.
So can you give us an idea
Sure,
about when the error will be corrected?
I can let you know that I will call you by the end of this week and let you know what I found out. Okay?
So
we're not, it sounds to me we're not in a position at this time to say it can be corrected by such and such. We're asking you to let staff, none of us here were on this board in 2008, except Sarah.
Yeah.
But
No, but what I'm saying is that the county has said that it was a matter of transposing it, and you're telling me that the county can't do that? I'm not
No.
understanding.
I just need to look into it, Ms. Milton. I apologize. It's just something I need to educate myself on. So I will do that, and I will get in contact with you by the end of the week. And if there is a way that we can help you, then I'm sure that we will.
Well, that's the thing we're going to ask her to do. If she looks at it, we can verify that this was an issue that started over 70 years ago and it got transposed during there, whenever. And if it is established that we have the ones that made the mistake, we'll fix it. Now, I can't speak to what happened prior to 2008 and on back and what you were promised by the respective boards then.
No, what I'm saying is that the property descriptions were transposed.
Okay.
Am I understanding you to say that the county will straighten it if it is determined that it has been transposed? Is that what you're saying or not?
If the county's able to fix it, I just don't know if the county is able to. But if
I'm
you'll
not
let me-
understanding why is the county not able. I'm not understanding that.
Right. So if I can research the matter and be in contact with you, and hopefully we can have an answer one way or another.
Well, understand that. And give her enough time that she has the opportunity to go and research. I mean, this stuff goes back decades. And let her have the opportunity to bring it forward and look at it and see where does it fall. And we'll take care of it if it is in our purview.
If at all possible.
I mean, I've been on the board 6 years, and this is the first time this has been brought to me on the board. So I don't know why. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Eleanor Campbell, and I want to know if this item was placed on the agenda, why hasn't some research been done so that we can get an answer today?
Sure.
Ms. Campbell, when a citizen requests to be on the agenda, at that point, we put them on the agenda and provide to the commissioners whatever material they ask us to provide to them. Ms. Milton? Okay.
Actually, I didn't. That response. Because
When there's
my
a request.
understanding is
Excuse me. Well,
that
you
you all
want me
have
to
to
answer
go
your
back
question?
and look at the records. When we got on the agenda, that was what we came today to find out. So I don't understand why the records have not been looked at.
Let me, okay.
Any other comments?
All we can say at this point is we're gonna get back with them. Sydney will do it by the end of the week. That's all we can do right now.
Go ahead, sir.
Tyrone Broadus, pastor of St. Mark Baptist Church, Flowers View. The school board donated that land to the Flowers View community. And because the person who recorded the deed recorded it wrong, and a fellow bought a piece of property, and when he went to the court to the registry, he found out that it was improperly registered and that the certificate showed that he had a piece in that community center. So he'd been trying for about 8 years to steal that property from the community. We had some lawyers that were supposed to help us straighten out this issue, and when they ran out of funds, they decided they could no longer help them with that particular problem. So Mrs. Milton got on the agenda hoping that we would be able to resolve this issue. So we hope that, if necessary, we'll get on the agenda so we can straighten this issue out. Thank you.
One of the things I'd like for you to do is see who drew up that deed. Keep on saying the county made the, see who drew up, there should be an attorney's name on it somewhere.
Right.
Ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Penny Stovall, and I have lived at the end of the Eastern Lake Road, 711.
Ma'am, hang on a minute.
Okay.
We're on a different subject matter.
Okay.
We're talking about something on the way in the north end of the county, nothing about Eastern Lake.
Okay.
That's
when do I come up?
Whenever we call that.
Okay.
I'm sorry. All right. What's the board's wishing?
Sydney, if you
Look
could,
into it.
if you could get this and get back with them as
Yes.
soon as possible.
Yes, sir.
And let's try to get this straightened out as quickly as possible.
Right. Well, I definitely will do the research and be in contact with Ms. Milton by the end of the week. If there is anything that the county can do, I certainly will do everything I can to help them. I just don't know right now.
Until you look
if-
at it.
Right.
Okay.
Well, if the
Okay.
school board was involved, the school board may have drawn the deed
Right,
up.
and from what I can remember, this was a deed from the 50s or 60s where the error was made.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we need to get this error straightened out as quick as possible, and I know you're gonna research it and find out what we need to do and what they can do.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's see what's up. All right, Neil, this is the time for public comments. You can talk about any issue you care to, and you can come up now, identify yourself with the clerk, and you'll have 3 minutes.
But she's Eastern Lake again.
Thank you. My name is Penny Stovall, and I have lived at the end of Eastern Lake Road for 23 years. I am sure you are aware of the many problems that we face out there due to all the development that has taken place. In your folders, you should have letters from my 2 neighbors, Mr. Jim Button and Mr. Doug Bush, expressing their concern over the Greenway Station project. I would like to echo their concerns. I did not receive a certified letter until about 6 days ago. I think Mr. Bush sent you a photo of our overcrowded, If I could, I would like to share with you today some of the pictures of the parking problems that we face on Eastern Lake Road, which has no parking places at all except on private property. That causes some awful issues there, and it is completely inadequate for traffic. Eastern Lake Road becomes a private road at 517 Eastern Lake Road as it turns the corner. And it receives no county services as far as upkeep. Jimbo Bishop, our beach vendor out there, has been nice enough at times to come fill in holes for us so we can get out of our house. We, with both accesses being the nearest to this new development, I'm very concerned that the people from this new development will cause even greater problems, both on our overcrowded beach as well as our major parking problems. Thank you for letting me share these pictures with you. I know they're kind of late. They are a true representation of what we face almost every day. I have done hundreds of dollars worth of damage to my car, which doesn't make my husband very happy. Today was so hard to get out, I tore the mirror off of my van. He's going to be real happy with that. I have learned one thing. Don't ever buy a house at a dead-end street. I don't know what's proper.
You can leave them with the clerk.
And I have a set for
All right, Mr. Brooks.
Bob Brook, B-R-O-O-K-E. I happen to be the chairman of the board of the Friends of Scenic 30A, and in that capacity, I'm keenly concerned about maintaining the scenic beauty of the only state-approved scenic byway in Walton County. And I want to thank the Board of County Commissioners, the TDC, and the Department of Public Works for their efforts in working with one of our board members, Cliff Nauer, for a long period of time now to improve the signage conditions on 30A. And I think recently that has been done, and I want to thank the Commission for that. That's number one. That's the good news. The bad news is right now, Scenic 30A is cluttered horribly with political signs for the candidates that are running primarily for county commissioner and the county commissioner, the two county commissioner seats. I did a sort of an informal survey on the 30A about a week ago, and one candidate had 5 signs from one end of 30A to the other. And these are all in the right-of-way, which is illegal according to state law and I believe county law. One candidate had 5 signs, another one had 7, one had 4, and most of those, they at least made an attempt to put them towards the boundary of the right-of-way rather than close. The last candidate, and I won't name any of them, had 21 signs, most of which that I saw were within 5 feet of the paved surface of the road. So I would like to ask the county commissioners to, number one, ask the supervisor of elections to remind the candidates of the state and county laws prohibiting signage in the right-of-way, particularly along 30A. The rest of the county is not my major concern at the moment. 30A is. So one, ask the supervisor of elections to remind the candidates, preferably in writing, of the rules regarding signage in the right-of-way on the county roads. Number 2, ask the candidates to advise their supporters, because I'm sure the candidates themselves weren't out there putting signs in the right-of-way, so I'm not blaming them directly for the clutter that's occurred there. But to ask their supporters and remind them that it's illegal to put signs in the right-of-way on 30A, and ask the county administrator or whoever the appropriate authority is to have the public works people who normally remove the signs that are in the right-of-way to immediately remove all the political signs from the right-of-way on 30A. Thank you, Commissioners.
All right. Any other public comment? Ma'am, in the back.
I'm sorry, I didn't
We didn't
hear
catch
your
your
last name.
My name is Mary Bruns.
Bruns?
I own a house on William Street, which is by Eastern Lake. And I just got this in the mail today for the meeting tonight. This is the second time I've received this information the same day as the meeting. My concern is the William Street that I live on is considered a private road, which I understand the county is not able to assist in that neighborhood because of issues that happened last year with, I believe it's May Street or Dalton Street. Anyway, the county thought it was their road, then it turned out to be a private road. Anyway, William Street, when I moved there in 2000, was an adorable, sweet road, well-maintained. It's been ruined because of the development, the big trucks. When people build houses, they don't restore the road. So my biggest concern is that the development is going to be put in, And I just spoke with one of the developers, and there are no plans to assist with that road. So it has been, William Street has now been abandoned. I did a title search in 2000. It was owned by a company in California, which likely doesn't even know that it owns it. It's not owned by the residents of the street. And now it's been ruined, and now it's going to be used by this development, which I don't object to. The county, the beach down there is just gorgeous. I don't have a big objection to the plan being approved, but I do think that, as the woman just stated, some accommodation does need to be made for the residents of the neighborhood who will be receiving all the residents of this hotel and all the stores that are adjacent to it. I do not think that people are going to get on a shuttle, go to Watersound. I wouldn't. If I had the option of walking to a beautiful lake and a beach, I just wouldn't get on a shuttle. So I guess I don't know how to put that before you, but I would like it if you all would start to consider these small roads within the developments, which are just not owned by anybody. They're not maintained. Our particular road, William Street, you could easily break your axle driving down it at night because the drop at May and Williams is now easily 2 feet deep. So someone could break a leg, they could break an axle, and it's really dangerous. So I would love the county to at least address it with respect to the developer. They may be motivated to help with the road, or perhaps the county, would be willing to help the taxpayers figure out what to do with the road. It's a very short section of it. It's just the section from 30A to Center Street. The rest of it is part of a maintained development. So it's really only about maybe 300 feet long. So, and I understand you all had an issue last year, but I would love for you to address our street, one street over William Street.
All right, thank you. I want to mention that this time we're still going through our planning issues for tonight. A couple of speakers already has been regarded to what we got coming up on the agenda. So if you've got that, you want to make a public comment about anything, if it's one of these objects, I'd wait until that comes up, and that way it'll flow a little bit better as far as the information, okay? Is there, Ms. Bowman?
Coy Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N. It doesn't surprise me that there's all these problems, especially up there about the community center and any kind of paperwork that was done back in the 40s and 50s, because it was all forged. Abstract title companies are not real title companies. You can't just buy a title for a piece of land. It either exists or it doesn't. So, I mean, everything, this entire region is built on errors. One mistake over another mistake. Like, I have never seen so many errors in what's supposed to be called legal paperwork. If you look online, the state of Florida, the Walton County and the Bay County, the Tri-County area, there's flaws in everything. I mean, I get up every time that you all want to build something and point out some error in the paperwork. It's either forged or the dates aren't right or it's for a completely different county. Like, everything here is built on a mistake. And that is why we're in such chaos, is because you all just keep doing what you're not supposed to be doing based on all these lies that this county has been involved in the last 50 to 100 years. So it doesn't surprise me that there's all of these problems. And then you've got this system that's like basically a farce. You lie to the people and tell them that you're for something when you're really against it, just like the House Bill 631. That's actually in favor of the public, and you want everybody to think that it's not, it's the opposite. Like, this whole political system is a farce. Y'all are basically charlatans. And then you've got this system.
Ms. Bowman.
You've got this
Ms.
3-minute
Bowman,
system where
you
please.
listen to me for a minute.
I'm allowed to say whatever I want during my 3 minutes.
You can't sit here and disparage this board with these innuendos and everything else.
They're not innuendos. This is my
political opinion. You have no proof to say that I'm a charlatan or anybody else on this board is. If you have it, come with it. If you don't, take off.
Okay, yeah, you don't recognize Florida House Bill 631.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, I do.
You have no idea.
Florida House Bill 631 says that the Private property ends at the vegetation line, where you had told me in the last meeting that you recognized surveys that were done in the 50s that say the private property.
I have not
private-
done that.
Y'all said
You're-
last time you recognized those
You're done.
surveys as
Go
legal.
sit down.
Wait a minute. You
You
can't
go
just-
sit down.
you-
You're done.
This is the problem.
That's exactly right. Go sit down.
They don't like what you have to say, so they don't let you say it. That's fascism.
One more outburst, and you're out of here. Understood? Okay. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move into the planning. Mr. Mack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department. We've got a number of items on our agenda tonight. The first of which is item number 39. This is requesting approval to advertise a request for qualifications for development and implementation of a transportation mobility fee program as a replacement for the proportionate fair share program used to manage transportation concurrency and mitigation of transportation impacts of development in Walton County. I do have one correction to the scope of work that's included with this item. The title of task number 3 actually should be Detail and Test Mobility Fee Program and Framework. The details underneath that title are not changed, and I'm going to provide the clerk with a copy of that scope. Subject to your approval, this work would be performed and paid for with proportionate fair share funds. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Board got any questions?
No, sir.
What's the board's wishes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Your motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That would move us to our add-on agenda, which is item number 18-10098. This is the request to approve and authorize the chairman to sign a resolution authorizing a Walton County application to Florida Department of Transportation for transit service development for South Walton County utilizing electric transit vehicles. The application was prepared with the assistance of West Florida Regional Planning Council as previously directed by this board.
Okay.
This is the companion to the commuter assistance project that DOT has been funded, and we're awaiting the funding paperwork.
Okay. What's the board's wishes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, sir, and commissioners. The next item is our addition number 3, which is item 18-10096. This is a request to advertise a request for qualifications for transit service providers for the North-South Commuter Assistance Transit Service along US 331 from Defuniak Springs to Santa Rosa Beach, and additionally for future transit operations for the US 98, 30A, and Scenic Gulf Drive area in South County that we're applying for the grant for.
Board's wishes?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion and a second. Any public comment? Ms. Bowman?
Chloe Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N. Yes, I am against a public transit system that brings anyone from Defuniak down to Santa Rosa Beach. Thank you.
All right, any other public comment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, sir. That's this will move us into our legislative items.
Okay. Number 40.
Can we, Sydney, as a matter, can we limit, I know right now we have 3 minutes for people to speak, but can we limit that time?
Yes, Hannah, when we've got our board procedure,
No.
but you can limit the.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, thank you. Okay.
Well, we still, let's see, 1, 2, 3.
Because the
Eight.
remaining items are legislative
We got
We
nine,
have one.
we got 9 items to go through. It's getting close to 6. I'd entertain a motion if you want to take it from 3 minutes to 2 minutes on these legislative items.
I will make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, Mac.
Thank you, sir. Item number 40, this is our Land Development Code Amendment item tonight. This is a first reading of proposed amendments to Chapters 1, 2, and 3 of the Walton County Land Development Code. These amendments include substantive and technical amendments to Chapter 1, General Provisions, Chapter 2, Land Use, Chapter 3, Concurrency Management. Among other substantive amendments in Chapter 2, it provides for the creation of an official zoning map and the establishment of zoning districts for the unincorporated areas of Walton County. And Kristen Shell has worked very hard on this project with Matrix, and I'll turn it over to her for answering the questions.
Commissioners, there is a summary in your packet, and right in front of, it's tab 2, or tab 1 in mine, of the Chapter 1 changes. And I also have a summary of the Chapter 2 changes. There's a couple of policy issues in here that we can discuss if you would like.
Can you tell us what page of this draft you're on or speaking to?
It looks like this. And this is the summary of Chapter 2. I don't know, in my packet, it's right after the agenda item
I see it.
submission
Thank you.
form. You
Got it.
got it? Yeah, okay.
The clerk need one?
She should,
I'll bring it.
oh yeah, that's a new one, absolutely, sorry. Notably, here in Chapter 1, there is a change to make neighborhood infill projects follow the same development approval process as our other developments. So that's probably the most substantive change in the Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is a combination of a number of other chapters in the code, so 8, 9, 10, and 11 are combined in Chapter 1. And then for Chapter 2, a companion change there is to eliminate the compatibility analysis requirement for neighborhood infill in favor of hard standards. So there are hard standards in there instead of the whole subjective compatibility analysis process.
Question, reference number 3 on your summary.
Number 3.
Can you explain that a little bit better? It's reference zoning districts, Chapter 2.
Okay, you're on Chapter 2. Yes. Yeah, there's 2 policy decisions here in Chapter 2 that I'd kind of like to talk to you about. The first one is the communication, it's under number 2, the communication towers in large-scale ag and general ag. Something that's a little bit different as we move to a zoning framework, a traditional zoning framework, the conditional uses and special exceptions kind of take on a different meaning than they did for us in the past. So we had a number of conditional uses listed in the Land Development Code that we didn't really treat as zoning-related conditional uses. This is kind of hard to explain, but some of them are related to single-family homes, like item number 3, and some of them are related to development, so you would decide on those conditional uses as they came to you as developments. This one in number 3 is currently, if you're in ag, there is a conditional use listed for lots that are greater than 5 acres that they can have an accessory structure related to a home occupation. We need to, in my opinion, I think either make these as of right or conditional uses approved by the Board of Adjustment, which is traditional conditional use approval in a zoning framework. My recommendation would be to make them as of right, So, because these are things that don't normally come to you as a development order.
I think, again, we are starting to get, 5 acres or greater than 5 acres, you gotta have a major DO process to build an auxiliary structure on your land.
That's the current requirement. I
Well,
would
we
like
need
to
to change
remove
that.
that. Yes, that's what I'm suggesting here,
You
is that
can't
we,
change that.
is that we
Okay.
remove that and make them as of right, if you agree.
I agree with that.
Okay. I'm also suggesting that we make communication towers in ag and large-scale ag, conditional uses approved by the Board of Adjustment instead of major developments approved through our major development process. And we can add the conditional uses related to the Eglin Small Area Study, which is really the only true limiting factor on those large tracts.
Explain number 4.
We changed the family homestead, where you can divide property at a less than density than the ag or large scale ag. There's a state statute that's related to that allows family members to divide property for family members. Our current code requires that the family member homestead the property that he or she divides to other family members, and we're removing that requirement because the state statute does not require that to be homesteaded, so we would like to be consistent with state statute.
All right, will this in any way affect the size that they can cut out to give to a family member? Right
No.
now, I think it's about 2.5 acres.
Yes, no, there is no change to any of those provisions.
I'm of the opinion that's pretty stiff, and I won't tell you why. If I've got land, which I have, and I've separated out one parcel to my son, it took over 3 months to get that approval. I could not believe it. But anyway, that happened. And I kind of looked at it, okay, you got these young couples that are wanting to start out in life. And if granddaddy or daddy decides to give them an acre, they're prohibited from doing that, right?
No.
No?
No, not currently. That 2.5 acre provision applies to all tracts, whether or not they're family homesteaded or not. Those are lots of record that kind of gives them a break from the density, whether or not they give them to a family member. If you give it to a family member, there's no restriction on size other than the water and sewer connection.
Well, that ain't what I was told whenever I had to go through it myself.
Sorry.
I'm telling you. I go in there, I said, well, I gotta give 2.5 acres. Not that I cared, but the thing is, why couldn't it be a half acre? It's on ag, general ag. And being told I've gotta go with a 2.5 acre cutout. Didn't make sense to me.
You don't know, sir, but
I don't know
that's-
either,
that's
but
not
I wanna make sure.
what's in there now.
I wanna make sure while we're doing these changes and all that it is clear and concise on doing this. And the homeowner, the landowner has the opportunity to reduce that 2.5 or whatever number down.
So,
Okay.
for family, it is reduced. So if you have a desire to reduce it for everybody, then we would need to change that. I think what happened is back when we adopted the 1 per 10 and 1 per 20, there was probably some concern over, people that had existing lots that were less than that and their ability to be able to subdivide. And so a provision was put in that allowed them, if they had less than that and they were a lot of record, that they could divide a limited number of 2.5 acre lots. And you don't have to be family to do that. You just have to have a lot of record.
I understand that. And it was a lot of record. And it was a 10-acre parcel. And they said I had to cut that out. I just don't understand why I was told to cut that out.
Was that the parcel your homestead was on?
Yeah.
It was probably, that qualified for 1 to 2.5 rather than 1 to 10. So Renee
Well,
probably allowed.
I'm
them
just
to
saying we
put
need to
one
clean it.
parcel.
I'm
May have thought
concerned
that
we
helped
need to
you.
have it where if that grandfather wants to cut out a piece of his property, it shouldn't be 2.5 acres. If he wants to be an acre or a half acre, he ought to have that latitude to do so.
You can do that. You can do that. That's all
Okay.
good. That's actually in state statute, so.
Very well.
Okay, so those really are the big things that, unless you see anything else on here, you know, I will say that moving to zoning does create a little bit of different scenario, again, with conditional uses. And so many of those will go to the Board of Adjustments or be as of right in some of these categories, which is different than kind of how we do it now.
Okay. Questions from the board?
No.
Any public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Chipman. And first, let me say that we are very pleased with all the work that the Planning Department is doing in amending the Land Development Code and Comp Plan at this time, and just want to give this county commission and their staff a significant praise for the hard work that they've been putting into it. We, with regard to Chapter 2, in which you were just discussing, and I haven't seen the summary, so I don't know if that wasn't on the website. But there was a particular zoning category of parks and recreation, and what we, when it went through the Planning Commission, and I'd like to hand this out. It's the same document that I handed out at Planning Commission. In particular, what I would like to address is that the Parks and Recreation language, as it stands today, is very restrictive, and it is made specifically for the county to own the property and for there to be only like open passive recreation sort of thing on it. And what we would like to propose is that the county open up the ability to adopt language, a conditional language in their zoning that allows them to, a person to be able to provide an ancillary use to the park that is substantive to that park. For instance, we believe wholeheartedly that we need more parks for people to get out and be active, for children and families. And part of that involves creating parks along the bay and the rivers and the bayous. And the county itself has taken up a big perspective on that to try to get these things underway. And in some cases, you have areas that have the ability to put a boat into the water or to have a picnic table, but there are no other ancillary uses permitted. So ultimately what we're talking about is the ability to have a facility, to facilitate having ancillary uses on that property that would allow small commercial uses that only serve that property. It's not a commercial use like putting a restaurant on the park, but rather having things like boat storage or, you know, in some cases they may want to have facilities for people to be able to have activities at those parks. And we provided a letter that explains our actions.
Okay. Mac, y'all got anything you want to say in regards to that?
Yes, sir. We've received some preliminary language proposed for that particular addition to the code. This is a first reading tonight. We're proposing that the second reading and adoption hearing be held on August 14th, which is the first BCC meeting in August. And that will give us time to review the proposed language and make some additions if it be the wishes of the board.
Okay, thank you. All right, where are we at? Yes, sir, come on.
Thank you. With respect to the changes to the,
Please identify yourself to the clerk.
oh, I'm sorry, Fred Tricker, Tricker. I should know that by now. With respect to the changes to neighborhood infill for smaller projects, it makes sense to make that I think it makes sense to make it a minor deal instead of a major. But there's a couple concerns there, and one is I think there needs to be some mechanism for getting notice out to the people that are in that area so they're aware of what goes on. Because the problem is, if it goes to the technical review committee, the first time they see anything about it is in the newspaper, and there's no details available prior to the meeting. And that's a big concern. If people want to see what's involved, what is going on, you should be able to give them an opportunity to review the details before the meeting actually happens. Because the technical review committee meeting is the final decision on it. It doesn't go past that. So there's no further opportunity to take a look at it. So that's the only thing I would request.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, Ms. Bowman, now you make your comments specific to this item on the agenda. Don't go off on all your tangents. Go ahead.
Only 2 minutes?
Yes.
Oh, Coy Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N. What's the point of making a definition of something if you can just change it? Like, you asked if Matt could explain to you why you have to cut off 2.5 acres of a 10-acre parcel of agricultural land, is because 2.5 acres is about the minimum amount of land that a person could actually live off of, meaning homestead, meaning growing crops to survive, which is why that rule has been there for so long, is because if you have a piece of agricultural property that you're homesteading and you want to cut off a chunk for your family member, then it needs to be a large enough chunk that they could grow crops and live on it. Okay, so now I know a lot of people don't grow crops so much anymore, but the reason why this area of Florida was zoned agricultural is because this land needs to grow things in order to stay land, because if you cut down the vegetation or the trees or the crops, it turns into swamp. So now basically you're just putting different words on all of these things you're not supposed to do, like all of these issues you have with these developments. You're not supposed to be doing these developments. Everything is supposed to be residential preservation, 1 house per half acre. All of this other stuff you've done is just totally illegal. So now you're making laws or changing the definition of what's residential, or we've got a map in there that shows 26 different zones from residential preservation to commercial. And you want to lump them all together so that there's just one kind of residential, which absolutely destroys the protection that a traditional neighborhood has if you're going to just say that that's the same kind of residential as this other residential over here that's high impact. Developments are specifically just for temporary people. They're not about actual residents that live here in Homestead. So once again, it's just a matter of trickery definitions.
Okay, is Lori Rickenbach here?
I think she left.
They left, him and John, they wanted to comment. Anyone else on this particular item? Seeing none? It's more-
Motion to move forward to the next hearing, which will be on August the 14th. Did you get that right? Yes.
Okay.
I'll second that if you'll add the fact that they'll work with this language that Melissa was talking about.
Yes.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, Mac?
Thank you, Commissioners. This brings us to item number 41. This is Waterfalls by the Bay, large-scale amendment. This is a request to transmit this large-scale amendment. It's been reviewed by Tim Brown. It's a large-scale map amendment requested by J&L Eagle Cove, requesting to amend future land use map from a designation of conservation residential, 2 units per acre on approximately 27 acres, to a designation of low-density residential, which is 4 units per acre. The project's located on the north side of Alderberry Road, east Hewitt Road, and is identified by the parcel number in your package. We'd like to request a staff report be entered into evidence.
So moved.
And the applicant is here to further explain their request.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, David Theriak, good evening. I have a 3-ring notebook with some exhibits. May I approach to distribute? Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to thank the Planning Commission for recommending approval of all 3 items that are before you today and the time and effort that staff has spent with us.
I'm sorry, David.
No worries, sir.
Yeah, you took it from me.
I have another one, Mr. Chairman. And before we start our presentation, I'd just like to briefly walk through what's in the binder. And we have a brief presentation. We're not going to spend a lot of time, I promise, Commissioner Commander. Exhibit 1 is the conceptual master plan for the project. You actually have 3 items tonight: the large-scale plan amendment, the conceptual master plan, and a PUD overlay, and they all work together. Exhibit 2 is the site plan. Exhibit 3 is the PUD report submitted by Scott Jenkins. Exhibit 4 is a land use compatibility analysis for the comp plan amendment. Exhibit 5 is an analysis of the density, lot size characteristics, and housing type for the project. We have a density of 1.76 is what's proposed for this project. Exhibit 6 is our proposed PUD overlay ordinance. Exhibit 7, one of the things that we propose as a public benefit is in the northeastern corner of this property. The property owner would construct a nature observation deck that would be open to the public. We would dedicate it to the county, and it would only be accessible by kayak and boat, keeping it very low impact, making it a real nice nature observation area. Exhibit 8 is a memorandum of agreement, and this is one of the exhibits I'm really thrilled to be able to present to you. This is after we went to TRC, we had several discussions with Christy Caldaway, who is a nearby neighbor. She supports the Eagles. The Eagles have meant the world to her for quite some time. We were able to reach a memorandum of agreement with Ms. Caldaway, and we did 3 things that are set forth in paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. And as a result of this memorandum of agreement, Ms. Caldaway has agreed to support our project, and we're really thrilled that we were able to work that out. The 3 things essentially are, real quickly, on pages 7 and 8 of our report, it sets out the eagle protection requirements of state and federal law, and those requirements will run with the land. Item 2, there was a portion on our site plan that was open space, common area, and we changed it to preservation area, so it will never be built. It's 3.71 acres, and that's reflected on our revised site plan. And number 3 was we had a deviation request for a minimum of 0 foot for rear setbacks for lots that had a rear setback adjacent to the wetland buffer area. Ms. Caldaway asked if we would increase that to 5, and we've agreed to do that. So as a result of these 3 items, we've been able to resolve Ms. Caldaway's concerns regarding our development. And then the last 3 exhibits are just the resumes. Laura Mills-Gutcher was our planner. She did the compatibility analysis, the lot size analysis. Patrick Imhoff is our biologist who did the environmental analysis. Unfortunately, Mr. Imhoff is not here. He had a family emergency and had to go to Pensacola. And then the last resume is of Scott Jenkins. And just so that we would have those in the record so you would know who was on our team. And the only one I'm going to call, unless you have questions, is ask Scott to kind of walk you through the technical issues. And then I'll be available, Scott will be available, and Laura will be available to answer any technical questions.
Okay. Scott?
Thank you.
As Scott's coming up, I did hear from the lady, and I can't remember her name at this particular moment, that's been fighting so vigorously for the Eagles. And she said you have finally, and she approves of everything you've done.
Yes. Scott Jenkins with Jenkins Engineering. Yes, that's Ms. Caldaway. We've been working with her for a while. Actually, just briefly, I'll just tell you, we've been working on this property for about 13 years now, actually, with the owner, so it's been a long time. And glad to be here tonight and glad to have Ms. Caldaway's support. And I think it's a great project with all the changes we made. But just to walk you through it really quickly,
overlay, because one of the things that, a lot of times the county has had problems with in the past is being able to hold property owners' feet to the fire. That when they say they're gonna do something in land use changes are hard to really tie people down to specifics. But this ties them down to specific things such as open space requirements, lots, the number of lots, total amount of density, the fact that all of the wetlands that are not impacted on the site will remain in conservation and won't be impacted in the future. And so this is kind of why you see a more detailed plan here than you would normally see for a land use change. Again, just to run through it, 72 acres, we have 128 lots total that's shown on this here. All of the wetland areas other than a few spots that are being used for access where we have to cross will remain in conservation and actually an easement that's dedicated to the state. That's part of the permitting associated with this. They have gone through and we actually have some preliminary design on stormwater management, which is wet ponds throughout the system that all connect and eventually discharge to the bay after meeting all the treatment requirements. One of the really cool things I think about the project, like Dave was saying, is just the total amount of open space. If this were to stay exactly as it is today, you would be required to have an open space requirement of about 70%. The way that this is designed in the proposed change, we're at about 75, so we actually increase that. By the layout, leaving the things in conservation, taking some of the lots out, leaving those as preservation areas, basically even though they're not wetlands. Those would be upland preservation in that area. As David said, this is the area that we had some lots here initially. Those have been removed and that will be preservation. There are two existing eagles nests. One is active, which is currently over in this area. One is kind of the secondary nest that's over here, and that's one of the reasons why we took the development out of that area to stay away from it. And the same thing here, we had some lots that were showing up in this area that we removed so that we would stay outside the buffers for the eagle area and try to minimize everything that, all those impacts there. Lot sizes range from about 0.12 acres on some of the smaller interior lots to about 0.8 acres on some of the others. So there's a different range. We are at a density of about 1.76 units per acre for the whole thing, so under 2 units per acre. And those are just kind of the highlights. I'd be happy to answer any other specific questions you guys may have about what we're proposing.
Any questions for Scott? Mr. Anderson, I'll take that as a no.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mac, you got any other follow-up?
Yes, sir. This is a request to transmit, and they are right. They've been working on this project for about 13 years. We previously opposed increases in density on this particular site, but we were able to work with the applicant and demonstrate that the amount of open space that is required today compared to the open space that would be required after approval of the land use increase in density would be more than what they would be required to provide today. They're proposing to actually have more open space than the code actually requires them to have. And they're making good efforts to manage developing within an area that has an eagle's nest. They've agreed not to do construction within 500 feet during the eagle's nesting season, so that precludes the need for an incidental take permit. And Ms. Caldaway has supported the project at the Planning Commission. She has championed protection of the eagles in this neighborhood for at least 15 years. So we're very proud of her and proud of this project that's also supporting that.
My question, Mac.
Yes, sir.
Part of what's being presented tonight is PUD overlay district. Did I understand that if that is approved, then they have to build that?
Their site plan and
Yeah.
the details of the PUD document become part of the land development code, and actually becomes law.
Okay.
But that's what we're asking for tonight. They're presenting, the first item is the land use, the large-scale amendment. The next item would be the approval of their project and their request for the approval of the final order. And then we would request first reading of the PUD overlay ordinance. And then, since that's an amendment to the Land Development Code, it requires 2 hearings at this board. The large-scale amendment requires a transmittal and an adoption hearing, so we would propose that the second hearing and adoption hearing for the large-scale amendment and the second hearing and adoption of the PUD overlay ordinance would occur at the same time, and that would occur at our 4th Thursday BCC planning meeting in August, which would be August 23rd.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, this is David Theriak. If I could follow up on your question.
Yes, sir.
That is the reason that we provided the 3 items before you. If we were just coming with a future land use map amendment that would allow increased density, you would have no certainty on what level we were looking at. And I believe the category would allow 4 to 1. So we're actually restricting ourselves and tying our hands by doing the PUD overlay as well. And you're guaranteed a density at 1.76 overall.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? I've got one here, Miss Christy Colaway. Is she here? Yes, she is. Welcome.
Yes, Christy Coldaway, and I do live on East Jewett Road, and it has been a long time, and I do recognize some familiar faces on people in the past, and even the planning department, staff, so many people have put their input into this and made changes for the better, and like they said, the owners and the engineer have worked, Mr. Bloomberg, Mr. Jenkins, on protecting the eagles, looking after the density and the wetlands in the area, with this property being so, having so much wetlands on it, that they did say that they would basically, definitely look at the buffer areas and the erosion in the area, keep those estuaries and bayfront as pristine as possible. So with all that, all the changes and all the work that's been done on it, I do say that I thank them and the county for its work, and I do approve this all 3. I'm not just talking about the first project, but all 3 things put together.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you. Lee? All right, first hand I seen that was the gentleman right there in the center aisle. Yeah.
I'm Richard Williams, Williams. I live in Eagle Bay Landing, a development that is close to this proposed development on the other side of Alderberry and closer to the bay. My house is within 500 feet of a portion of this proposed development. I attended a presentation on this development a little while back, and I think it's a very, very well proposed area. The density appears to me to be less dense than my development, even though my development is closer to the bay. I think it would be a benefit to the county, and I recommend its approval.
Thank you, sir. There was somebody else.
Thank you. Fred Tricker, Tricker, representing SWCC. I'd like to have this entered into the record, please.
So moved. You're gonna tell us what it is, I hope.
I will. I do.
You got a copy, legal?
Okay, I guess, you know, I know we don't have a lot of time here tonight, but just touch on some of the highlights. I think the big concern that we have is related to density. And it's more of a macro problem in Walton County. A lot of our problems with traffic, stormwater, and other things are related to density. And if everybody comes along and gets double the density that's allowed by the current comp plan, you know, we're only making our problems worse. And I don't see some of those problems being solved really quickly. So that's one issue. But the other problem is that you've got increased density in an area that's full of wetlands. It's environmentally sensitive. So with conservation residential, not only do you have half as many lots, you got 54 instead of 108, but you're required to preserve 60% of the land in its natural state. So I calculate that's 21 acres that are potentially impacted. So that has an impact on the environment. So, you know, I guess the looking at the policy and the comp plan for amendment changes, there needs to be a defined need. And there's been no need defined. This would be a great project. It looks like a good project anyway. Be a great project if it didn't have as many properties on it.
Okay. All right. Mr.
Thank you.
Theriak, you want to respond? Well, I'll tell you what, Ms. Bowman? Okay. He's going to wait. Ms. Bowman?
Coy Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N. First of all, I agree with this last man who said it's going to overburden everything because everything is overburdening everything. You should never approve another single thing to be built here because we're so overburdened. Secondly, like the two pieces of land, I've looked at the deed, and one of them says that it's been donated to the Internal Improvements Trust Fund of the state of Florida as a conservation easement. They actually both have the word conservation easement. So then I look over at their little map, and they've got like little circles drawn around where they say they're not going to touch because that's the part they're conserving. This is like such a farce to think that you can conserve and preserve something in its natural state, but then build a bunch of houses and concrete and parking lots around it. Like that parking lot down there just north of Grayton where the shuttles go back and forth. Like 10% of that is conservation marsh. And if you go in the back of the parking lot, they've actually paved that part, and there's a little wet spot in between the parking blocks that they're calling conservation easement. So now the state of Florida owns something like $8 million worth of this $28 million chunk of property that's supposed to be conservation land. But I just don't believe it, because when you look at Sandestin, that's supposed to have 33 acres of conservation land, what they have their lines drawn around is just water now. So like I've seen so many times you take a piece of property that's supposed to be conservation, conservation, and it all of a sudden turns into a parking lot with a mud puddle in the middle, and you want to call that conservation. You know, like the amphitheater in Seaside is a conservation easement. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Anyone else? I don't see anyone with closed public comment section. Mr. Theriak?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to ask Scott Jenkins to address the environmental issue, and then I'll have a few closing remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, just to address the environmental concerns associated with this, we're really fortunate in this case that we have a property owner who's willing to let us do the things the way that they're supposed to be done. We don't always have that ability. But in this case, this is actually probably one of the more environmentally sensitive developments I've ever been involved with. Again, as we stated initially, the existing wetland areas, other than just crossing areas, have already been placed in conservation easements and for perpetuity on this piece of property, so that will not change. The open space requirements far exceed what you would see in any standard development. It's actually more than what's required currently. So I think as far as stormwater issues and things like that, we are adjacent to the bay, and we do plan on providing all the attenuation and treatment requirements, plus some associated with this development. And it's a great thing. You don't really have any downstream neighbors that would potentially be impacted by anything. But I just wanted to hit those highlights really quickly. If you had any questions about those things, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Scott? None, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, again, David Theriak. I appreciate South Walton Community Council's concerns about overdevelopment, but I would state that we're at 1.67 acres, or 7 units to the acre. This is not overdevelopment. If we were at 10 or 15, maybe that's a different story. And the properties that have been developed in this area range. Eagle Bay Landing is at 144. Eagle Bay Phase 2 is at 4.92. In fact, we are lower from a density perspective than 5 of the 6 surrounding subdivisions that are nearby. The property to the immediate west is owned by the state. That's not going to be developed. So I don't see what we're proposing to be overburdening anything. It's one of the lowest density projects I think I've worked on in Walton County. And as Scott has mentioned, we've dotted all the environmental stormwater issues that we're supposed to do to protect this area. This density allows us to do that. So we would ask your support to approve all 3 of the items before you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Legal, can we handle all 3 of these at one time with one motion? Or are we gonna have to go through hearing number 2 and number 3?
Well, you've heard them all together.
Yeah.
But I think we need a motion on each individual item, just to be clear.
Yes, sir, if we could have separate motions, since one of these has to be transmitted to the state, we need a separate motion on that, and then we're adopting an ordinance, or we're proposing to adopt an ordinance, and then a final order.
All right, then if that's the case, let's take item number 2, the large-scale amendment, and what's the board's wishes?
We'll make the motion that we approve by ordinance.
Approve the transmittal to the Department of Economic Opportunity.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Then number 3 is Waterfalls by the Bay PUD overlay ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, if we could take the next item first, and then the overlay ordinance after that.
Okay, we'll go the number 4 on here, Waterfalls by the Bay conceptual PUD. Motion to.
Motion to approve this one, if the board wants to entertain.
Motion to approve.
And we do have conditions proposed in the final order, so approve with the conditions.
With conditions.
With conditions.
With
Okay,
condition
Got a
first.
motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Then we go back to number 3, Waterfalls by the Bay PUD overlay ordinance.
And this is a request to approve the first reading and set the adoption hearing for August 23rd.
Okay,
So moved.
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, I think number 5, Mac, is Greenway Station conceptual PUD.
We lost Commissioner Commander.
Yes, sir, we have,
We lost Commissioner Commander.
She had to
Might
use
need
the
to take a break.
All right, well, hold up. All right, I know I got some paperwork on this one, if I can just find it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next item is the Greenway Station. And if we could take the project before the ordinance.
Accept.
The Greenway Station conceptual PUD. This is a request to approve by final order. It's been submitted by Emerald Coast Associates. They're requesting approval for approximately 37,102 square feet of non-residential. It includes a 50-room lodge, 35 condominium units, and an 800 square foot trailhead building with a future land use of village mixed use and neighborhood infill on approximately 4.89 acres. There is a request in this application for a deviation. They're actually requesting 3 deviations. One of those deviations is not necessary. They're requesting a deviation for the percentage of residential in a mixed-use PUD. We've determined that this is qualified as a residential PUD that has a maximum 20% non-residential component to it, and their proposed percentage of total allowable development for non-residential is less than 20%, so that deviation is not necessary. We do have several conditions that are fairly standard in addition to the 2 deviations they're requesting. And at this time, we'd like to ask the staff report be entered into evidence.
So moved.
The applicant's here to present their case.
All right, come forward, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Steve Hall. I have the pleasure of being the attorney with this fine project team. It's kind of an intimate setting tonight. We appreciate the time tonight. Again, this is a conceptual PUD approval, which means that we'll be back before you when we develop the detailed PUD plan, as that's the way the LDC spells out the PUD approval process. So what we're doing tonight is a conceptual approval for the design. We'll have to come back to you when we get stormwater and civil drawings and the details that are required for a detailed PUD approval. So tonight what we're trying to bring before you is a project that we think that we've worked on for about 3 years if you look at the history. And we have from the beginning decided this was going to be a project that was sensitive to the site and was also sensitive to the neighbors. And in part, this project has absolutely been designed by the neighborhood. We are, if I can just orient you, the book that you've got, if you look at those first couple of pages, that'll show you where we are. For those of you who've been around, and you've been around, it's the old Collaboration site. Used to be a retail and mini storage warehouse development on the site. So we are a redevelopment of an existing site. The last existing EO on the site was for a mixed-use development, and they lost that development to foreclosure in 2007. My clients acquired the property soon thereafter from the bank and have been working on it ever since. So you see the location. Seagrove Baptist Church is to our immediate east. The Forest Service has their only connection down to 30A on our west side. Those 2 elements define the boundaries and the purpose for the project. On the north side, we really have the model, which is the Greenway Park subdivision that led to both our name and to our design, Greenway Station. We are trying to exemplify the same kind of environmental stewardship that Greenway Park started on the site, and we'll talk about that in a few more minutes. We have worked closely, had probably 3 dozen different community meetings. Neighbors, every HOA that would talk to us, everybody that we could get an indicator wanted to hear something about the project. Did we get everybody? Probably not. But we covered the bases. Changed the design significantly from the initial submission back in 2015. So what we have here is a 3-pronged presentation. If you move on to exhibits 6 and 7. Oh, Yeah, let's roll back so everybody else can see. Yeah, next one up. Yep. Yeah, so there's your project location. Next one up. Next one. I'm sorry, I wasn't giving you the finger, was it? One more. There we go. So the project site plan. Now to the elevations. This is an interesting triangular shaped site, almost 5 acres. You can see how it backs up to the forestry side on the west end, Greenway Park neighborhood to the north. If you look at the slide that's showing now, it's a 3D rendering to kind of give you a compatibility and the look of the design as it's placed on the site in context. What we have is a mixed-use plan that is themed in that 30A vernacular. We paid attention real closely to the Hampton Inn discussion. And we listened very closely and began to design the project to be essentially to address the concerns that were expressed through that process. One was a franchise. We're going local, and we're willing to commit to staying local or stay in non-franchise as a condition of the development order when we get to that detailed PUD stage. The vernacular, if you look at the next slide, that's the frontage on your next page. That's the frontage view showing the residential style architecture and the coastal, as my architect says, vernacular. So we think it's a pretty good looking project from the 30A view. Next slide. This is a better close-up of the mixed-use office and retail buildings along the front. The architect put a lot of bicycles in there on purpose, and that's the next part. What you see in that drawing also is what we'll discuss in a minute, which is an arbor that runs the length of the frontage of the project, adjacent to the street side of the mixed-use buildings. And that's designed to be a transit element that ties in with everything else we're doing with the transit-oriented development, and I'll tell you about in a second. Okay, next one. A component that Mac described is the lodge. And it's a 50-unit lodge. Mr. Chairman, you recall your motion many years ago to reduce the total number of units that could be put into a limited lodging hotel. And we took it down to that level that you had asked for at the time. This is the view back down to, from the roadside down to the front of the lodge building. Just to give you an idea of context. Next one, please, Brad. This is a close-up on the front end of the proposed hotel function. And that's the last one. So we talked about the 30A vernacular and a local look. The next part is an important part of this being a project of the future as opposed to being a project of the same old stuff. And it's the idea that we are developing deliberately, aiming at ecotourism, aiming at forestry, aiming at the Eastern Lake Trail System as a real draw and a real theme for this development. This is not a beach hotel. It's not anywhere close enough to the beach to call it a beach hotel. We are aiming specifically at the part of the tourism industry that the TDC is talking about with ecotourism, that the comp plan encourages in a number of different sections, that we begin to do something to diversify away from just strictly a beach culture. We think that we got a great partner in that. The Forestry Service has been working with us for a couple of years. We have a representative here with us tonight. They have been great because we have offered them something that they really have been looking for, which is a access to 30A for the Eastern Lake Trail System. So if you look at the design of the project, we have created an interchange between the hotel, the overall PUD, and the Forestry Service land. The agreement with the Forestry Service so far has been that we would provide them access and a constructed trailhead building, bathrooms, water, retail shop, and an access in so that they can create a parking lot on their side. And we can work together to create additional trail systems up into the greenways to the north and basically give them an access to not only 30A, but the multipurpose trail on the south of 30A and the transit system that I'll tell you about right now. So we've got this bent that we think is designed to the site, which is look into the forest. The theming for the retail, the theming for the lodge will all be aimed towards forestry resources, freshwater resources, lake resources. We've even talked with people like the E.O. Wilson Biophilia Center for a future relationship, because they'd also like to have access to 38. Now, the second part of it is that it's a transit-oriented development, because you hear about traffic every day, all day long. We are buying in completely to the Seaside Institute Dewberry approach to the retooling of 30A, which is the increase of multimodal use, the increase of transit capacity, even the park and ride capacity, where we go from 98 all the way down 30A. The transit stop is located right at the location of the trailhead. The idea is you're creating an energy center right there, which connects the multipurpose trail with bike rentals, with the trailhead, with a transit stop. We think that really serves the rest of the development real well. We think it really serves the lodge very well. And we think it serves the Forestry Service really well. Now, the next point of it being a transit-oriented development is that we believe that this will not only be a model for the Seaside Institute's progress. I don't know if you remember it, but they have about 14 different tram stops set from one end of 38 to the other. In their original plan, they actually put one of their transit stops proposed right in the location where we've got it. So we're working hand in hand. Jay Lyles is here tonight. He may be here to help us with how the Seaside Institute feels about it. We believe that one of the benefits that we've asked for, because this is a mixed-use development and because this is a transit-oriented development, in other words, we're building for pedestrians, we're building for bikers, we're building for tram users, people who are not operating out of their automobiles, 24/7, as part of our major client base. We want somebody to be able to come and stay at this lodge, park once, stay the entire time, and get back in their car when they're ready to go home. That's the design. So as a part of that, one of the exceptions that we've asked for is something that the code just doesn't recognize. And that's a reduction in the total amount of parking that is required in a mixed-use development and in a transit-oriented development. We have provided as a part of the study, as a part of the package, a study done by Rick Hall that analyzes the impact of the interaction between the mixed uses and the interaction on the transit-oriented development on the reduction of total parking spaces that are required overall. So at this point, the staff, I believe, has reviewed that parking study and does support the conclusions that Rick came to. And I'll tell you about those numbers in just a second. The other exemption that we're asking for is what runs down the front end of that retail and office restaurant frontage is another multi-use trail that defines the north side of the right-of-way. So we'll have the multi-use trail on the south side and on the north side as well. We're asking for an additional setback waiver of 10 feet in order to accommodate just that. The front of the buildings will still meet that setback requirement, but because it's a covered walkway, you'll have posts that go into the area that would otherwise be a setback. So we've asked for a variance just to cover that walkway. It also allows for a couple of porches on one of the buildings to extend forward, but that's the extent of the encroachment into that setback. We have worked with the neighbors. You've seen the letters of support. We had one letter of objection come in today from Dunlap and Shipman, concerned about the idea of whether this was a residential or mixed-use PUD. And like usual, we went to work one more time, and we were able to work that out with them. And we're now going to flip it over and recognize it as a residential PUD and do away with that exception. Doesn't change the numbers, doesn't change the configuration, but staff and Melissa were able to get together and resolve that concern. So we're real happy about that. I hope that you'll also have a couple of speakers that we're very proud to have. The South Walton Community Council has voted to support the project and consider it to be a positive for the community, not only for the process, but for the design. And the second thing is that we had a 6-0 approval at the Planning Commission level with Mr. Gladwell making the motion on the project. We're real proud of all those things. I do have members, I have the whole team here. I got planners, I got architects, I got engineers, I got everybody here to answer any questions. And I'll recognize them as we may need to respond to questions.
I only got one question, Steve. If you look at where this boundary line is to the neighborhood behind it.
Yeah.
Can't see it.
The Greenway Park.
There's a strip of land.
Right here.
No, the one that runs that way. Go to your left, that. Nothing in it. What's gonna use that for? Water?
It was originally extra parking. And in working with the HOA, the Greenway Park HOA, over a period of time, and the designer, the original developer, Ben Hammond, we determined that we would pull the parking spaces out of that area, and it's now going to be stormwater retention area. It'll be a green area. We'll also make it part of the Greenway system going north.
Okay.
So that, in part, was part of the parking issue, is that we felt like we could do away with those spaces.
Okay.
Make the neighbors happy.
Is there anybody else?
No, sir, I'm it. Unless y'all have questions, we got the experts to answer the questions.
Any questions? Okay. Any public comment? Let's move.
Coy Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N. I don't know how it is they think that they are going to build a 50-room hotel when we have a 15-room limit on lodging. Second, the only thing that village mixed use is conducive to is tourists and overburdening the land. I've already mentioned before that you can't have village mixed use because it's exactly what the federal government asked you not to do. I do have a question. One of the deeds here, it says something about developments of South Walton. Does the Walton County own any portion of this land?
No.
No? Okay, because it just says developments of South Walton, which is the only thing listed as a qualified sale, which was like $15 million back in 2005. Seems like a long time to wait for an investment turnover. But once again, this shows all kinds of signs of like not legitimate paperwork. And I don't have to go into it because I've already mentioned to you that like every single thing down here has something illegitimate about it. The land is not supposed to be treated this way. 50-room hotel and shops and why doesn't the state of Florida just take the whole thing and have it be a parking lot for walking in the trees? And if he thinks that people are going to stay here that only are going into the forest and not the beach, then he's crazy, because anybody that comes anywhere near 30A is going to be going to the beach. You can't build this and say that you're building it just for the people that want to go out into the forest, because I guarantee anybody that stays anywhere near 30A is going to the beach. So it will overburden the beaches. It will overburden the road. Oh, but how much money are you going to make for the tap fees on this?
I have no idea. We're not in the water and sewer business.
A bunch, though, because...
Thank you.
A bunch.
All right. Any other, Jay? Well, either one. Jay, you can follow him.
I'm Ben Hammett, H-A-M-M-E-T. I've worked on the Greenway Park subdivision since 2003, when Collaborations was there. We worked closely when the Courtyard at Seagrove project was proposed on it, trying to work things together. And then certainly over the last 5 years, as the current owners have pursued their directions on this, communications have been great. They've shared CAD files. They've talked to our association. I also was director of the association and president of the association until not standing for office this December. So I work on it all the time, and this project works well on 2 important levels. One, the people that bought lots from me, there are 10 lots across there that are just right there. And there are a lot of things that wouldn't be complementary to Greenway Park that could still qualify under the letter of the law. This exceeds that. It meshes perfectly with the intent of Greenway Park, which we have quite a few permanent residents in there. We support it on a lot of levels. Not only does it alleviate concerns about what much could go there, but it sets the stage for Eastern Lake to develop its character. It follows what the comp plan calls for, is a pattern of nodal development down 30A. There's a big stretch there. Everything from integrating with the forest to enhancing the transit system to improving the community and creating a great place for neighborhood people to come, I think is a plus. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Jay Lyles. I'm here on behalf of the Seaside Institute. I'm the project manager for 30A Mobility for the Seaside Institute. And while I am not authorized to speak on the overarching design and plan, I do want to compliment the developers on their attention to and dedication to using multimodal transportation as the means of moving people who come as their guests around the 30A area. We endorse the approach they're taking. We encourage them to continue to work with us to find ways in which we can get other businesses and new developments to use multimodal transportation. And while the board and staff will determine where appropriate stops are as this project builds out, we hope that you will give strong consideration to their request to make this one of the transit stops along the way. And if I might take the liberty, I apologize that I was not here earlier for your meeting, but I noticed that there were 2 additions. One was to approve a grant request to FDOT for electric vehicles, and the other is to send an RFP out for the 331 transit system. I hope those were approved. I'm sorry I missed that. But again, I want to thank you all for all your efforts in seeing that people begin to use other forms of transportation. And so we endorse the direction that this project has taken, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Debbie Hurd, H-E-A-R-D, and I'm here to speak on behalf of South Baltimore Community Council. As Mr. Hall said, this is a development that we are wholeheartedly on board with for several reasons. As he said as well, they had good community involvement in developing this whole concept. The variances they're asking for are reasonable. The PUD has the required public element that it needs for a PUD, and it's a good mixed-use development with a good balance. It's compatible with the neighborhood and will give the neighborhood restaurants and shops that are not in that location. My particular office is right down the street. We don't have that type of development there and would welcome it. The connection to the 30A mobility project with a stop there is excellent. The connection to the state forest with the trailhead and the work they've done with forestry is excellent. And from a personal standpoint, I'm chairman of the Coastal Dune Lake Advisory Board. And of course, ecotourism is something we are focused on here in Walton County. And I don't know if you noticed the map, the lake wraps around behind it. This doesn't fall in the protection zone, but the trailhead leads into the protection zone and into the watershed, which will increase ecotourism into the coastal dune lake area and bring notoriety to our coastal dune lakes and our rare natural resources. So South Walton Community Council endorses this project wholeheartedly, and myself, I'm very happy with the project.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Good evening. Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Chipman. Dunlap and Chipman representing the Summers Edge Homeowners Association. And I would like to first thank the staff and the developer and their agents and the whole team for working with us just to re-review their numbers and look at that information. It was wonderful to work with them. And I agree that this is a development that is compatible with the area. One of the issues that the association would just like to reiterate, and I don't believe I heard them mention it, so I just want to bring it up, is that with the internal capture and the transmodal position that they're taking in their parking request for a variance, we would specifically like to get the board to ensure that before they get a CO, as is required by the code, that they have an effective shared parking agreement that is officially provided to the county for review and acceptance. And we understand fully that there is a one ownership development here and that you don't normally have an agreement between yourselves, so we recommend that at some point they provide something that indicates that all the leaseholders that would run businesses in that development are aware that there's a shared parking agreement that requires them to not, that they don't have a future opportunity to sell those properties without adequate parking, and that they don't have a potential argument within them that creates a problem for parking throughout the development. And we appreciate you listening to our concerns and the staff as well.
Okay, thank you. All right. Steve, you got any rebuttal or follow-up you want to present based upon his statements?
If there are no questions from the board, I'd just like to thank you. 2 points that got touched on. The other partner that we are looking to work with, we've been working, but until we have an approval or an entitlement from the county, we can't really cut a deal. But we've been working with St. Joe as a local manager for both the lodge and other rental units as a good partner. Part of that involves the ability to tie into the beach resources at the Watersound Beach Club as a way of helping to lighten the load, if there is a load, on the local public access ways. The other part is that I didn't really introduce the developer or the team, but it's important that you know that Ricky Ruckus and his team are locals that have been working in the area for a long time. They've moved to a development stage or a stage with their business that they are building things to keep. And this is not a phased development. It is to come online, and they're looking at summer of '22 as being the time where it'll come online, 3 years. And they're going to keep it and operate it. It's not going to be a piecemeal sell-off to individual users. So they want to keep it, they want to run it, they want to keep it proud.
Well, I understand they want to keep it and all that, but things change over years, and I have a concern that it would be piecemeal and sell, and then we have the shared parking concerns. So,
and we don't object to the suggestion that Melissa made. We know there are two pieces. One, if we're going to be leasing it, so we'd best be doing leases that are guaranteeing compliance with the development order. And two, if we are ever to break it up to sell it, we'd have to come back for a replat or a plat, a commercial plat, if we're going to break it into 3 or more pieces. So we'd have to address those parking issues very specifically if we came back with a platting decision. So we think that provides part of the protection that you're looking for.
okay. Any other questions from the board? What's your pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Our next item would be number 44. This is the Greenway Station Conceptual PUD Overlay Ordinance. This essentially takes that plan and incorporates it into the Land Development Code and provides the further restrictions that this is the plan and it's not a greater plan. This would be a first reading of this ordinance, and we would request the adoption hearing be set for August 23rd.
I will make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we got any public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Mary Bruns. I'm not quite sure where this fits in, but just as the Summers Edge said, I think that as part of the approval process, a recognition of the impact on the neighborhood south of this development. It looks like a beautiful development, so I don't object to that, but it's going to have a huge impact on our neighborhood, and our roads are sand, unlike Summers Edge. So I just some proactive look at that and how they're gonna, I work professionally as a mediator, so rather than having conflict at the other end 5 years from now, when things have been worn down or the neighbors haven't felt respected, I think it would be good for the development to look at it, recognize that people will be walking to the beach, and just come up with a mutually respectful arrangement, just as they're gonna do with the parking.
Okay,
In
well,
terms
all
of
we can do is
maintaining
ask
roads.
him to look
Yeah.
at that. We
Yeah.
can't compel him to
No,
do it.
I understand that.
So,
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah,
they heard
if it
what
can
you
be
was talking about.
documented, yeah.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Penny Stovall, Eastern Lake Road. I just want to reiterate, I hope that sometime during this, or until you make your final decision, that you will have time to look at the pictures of what we are facing on Eastern Lake Road at the Summers Edge access. We are covered with cars. There are no parking signs. It is all private property. The government cannot put a no parking sign on a private property. And we're just absolutely, we can't breathe down there. I cannot imagine another big development coming in, and I agree with the other lady that spoke. You know that these people are gonna walk right down the street to Eastern Lake Road and go on the beach. Thank you.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Mac, what's next?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 46 on our agenda, the King Small Scale Amendment. This is a request to approve by ordinance. It's been reviewed by Bob Barante. It's a small-scale amendment application submitted by Jenkins Engineering requesting approval to change the adopted future land use of rural village to general commercial on 2.22 plus or minus acres. Project located at the southwest corner of US 331 and Short Avenue and is identified by the parcel and number in your package. You may recognize this parcel as being the triangular-shaped parcel immediately north of the new county park at the north end of the Bay Bridge. We'd like to request a staff report be entered into evidence, and the applicant is here to present his case.
Okay, so moved. All right, applicant want to say anything?
I won't use all that, don't worry. Scott Jenkins with Jenkins Engineering. We're here representing the applicant on this, and just as Max said, this is about 2.2 acres that is north of the 331 bridge, located right here, this Short Avenue, 331. Just so you can kind of see what's around the area. The park is going in this area, down here, south on Bay. There are other general commercial parcels that are directly adjacent to the north and to the east of this parcel. And it's kind of interesting that when we went before the planning commission for this item, and it was approved unanimously, the item right before this was actually the 331 corridor plan that the county was doing, which kind of promotes this kind of development in the area. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. It's pretty straightforward.
Any questions? Okay, I
Thank
guess not right now. Bob, is this is one I called you about on some of the language that was in the order? Has that been corrected and all? Okay. All right, any public comment? Ms. Bowman?
Coy Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N. This one,
does have Walton County written on it. It doesn't say it's the most recent sale. It says that in 2008, Classic Properties of Northwest Florida gave this land to the road and to the county. And there is no evidence on here that you sold it to anybody. So I'm guessing that the Department of Transportation needed this piece of land while it was building the bridge to store some equipment, and so the property owner gave them, because whatever the rights they got for $100, and you also, a separate sale, says that Classic Properties of Northwest Florida, or NWFL, sold this to Walton County for $100. And that now somehow it belongs to Hunters Road LLC, who purchased it also from Classic Properties. So Classic Properties of Northwest Florida has given this land to the road, to the county, and sold some of it to Hunters, whatever. So I want to understand how this is working. Does the road and the county still own a portion of this because you were gifted some of it back in 2008? Like a percentage of it? Because so much of the land around here people only own a percentage of, because there's a percentage that was held back by St. Joe back in the 70s. Like this entire island, St. Joe claims to own the mineral deeds because they never sold them back in the 70s. That's what's so dangerous about you developing residential properties on federal forestry, is because the mineral rights have been separated falsely decades ago. And they're doing these radioactive projects underground that are killing people. Of course, y'all don't want to talk about that. So anyways, you see that a bunch of boats are now going to be using this other thing that you've approved access to the bay as a public park right there on the corner. So you know that there's people are going to want to buy sodas and stuff. I'm sorry, did the thing beep? Yeah, it's just a way for you to make money off of that public access there. Thank you.
Sydney, just because somebody gives us a piece of property, if we do not formally accept it, it ain't ours, right?
That's your name's on the thing, so.
Just wanted to clarify that for my edification. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, got a
Motion to approve.
second. We got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, I think the next one is nope. Mallette.
Next item is number 47, the Mallet Small Scale Amendment. This is a request to approve by ordinance. It's been reviewed by Bob Barante. Small Scale Amendment submitted by Jenkins Engineering on behalf of Susan Mallet, requesting approval to amend the future land use category from conservation residential 2-to-1 to low-density residential on 9.94 plus or minus acres. Project located on the east side of Hunters Road, approximately a half mile north of US 98 West and the County Road Highway 38 West intersection. It's identified by the parcels numbers in your package. We'd like to request the staff report be entered into evidence.
So moved.
And the applicant is here to present this project.
Scott Jenkins again with Jenkins Engineering, here representing Ms. Mallet, who's here also to answer any questions if you may have any. Just a brief overview, this property is on Hunters Road, which is located here, County Road 30A on the west end, where it ties into 98 is right here. This is the Dark St. Joe properties that are in this location. This property is just under 10 acres. Here at two parcels that are owned by family. Directly to the south is a multifamily development that is actually the Sandestin Housing Authority, or not Housing Authority, it's housing where workers live. Here, the county actually approved this development in the early 2000s, I believe, where they actually changed the land use on this parcel to village mixed use, which is the most intense land use the county really has, which allows 12 units per acre. Everything to the north is actually conservation residential. And I'll show you the land use map here. As you can see, this is the parcel again, directly adjacent to west, south, and to the area over to the southeast. All of the pink area is village mixed use, which is a mixture of commercial uses, some multifamily, some pretty high intense development. Directly to the north is a subdivision here, which is conservation residential, 2 units per acre. The interesting thing about this subdivision is actually that it's still on septic tanks. Anything
in the area. Just to give you a little bit of history from planning commission standpoint, the initial request that the property owner made was to change this property to infill, which is a little higher use and offers some different uses than just single-family residential. The residents, the adjacent residents that came to the meeting had some issues with that. Planning commission had some issues with that. So the applicant has adjusted their request to low-density residential. We actually went back to the planning commission to rehear the request with that, and it was approved at that meeting unanimously. The difference is low-density residential would allow 4 units per acre at a maximum and would only limit it to single-family residential uses. There wouldn't be any other multifamily, which I think was the primary concern that we heard from most people. The other thing that I would point out is just with that little bit of increase in density going from the south to the north makes for a more equal transition between the two, because this is really highly dense to the south, lower dense to the north, and then state land further, so it helps with the transition between the two. And also, I think the property owner feels like this will give them the opportunity to do some more attainable housing in the area, so something for the workforce, because that is kind of what this area is about, and give them some more opportunities to do that without falling under some of the really restrictive requirements of CR 2-1. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. If you have any questions of the property owner, I'm sure she can add something to that also.
Commissioners, got any questions?
No, sir.
I guess not.
Thank you.
All right, any public comment?
I'm against it.
Of course. Anyone else? Fred?
I'm going to be brief, maybe not quite that brief, but if I could add this to the record, please.
So moved.
Okay, I guess the density argument for this project is the same as it was for the other one, basically doubling the number of units from 19 to 38. And in this case, it's a 10-acre parcel, but 3 of that is wetlands. So you're actually developing on basically 7 acres. So the actual density of the homes in there is not 4 to 1, it's actually more like 5.5 to 1. And again, the same concern about preservation. If it's conservation residential, they can only develop on 40% of the lot. There's no such restriction for low-density residential. So that represents an impact on the environment that I don't think is warranted. So basically the same argument we had before, and I just get credit for being consistent anyway, I guess. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any rebuttal or follow-up, Scott?
The only thing that I would point out is really the environmental concerns, like Mr. Tricker said. The property actually is a little under 10 acres, and it has about 7 acres of upland. So it's actually not very environmentally sensitive in this area. It probably doesn't fit the definition of the conservation residential land use very well to begin with. So really doesn't have any floodplain considerations other than the areas that are just adjacent to the wetlands also. So it's actually a pretty developable piece of property. So that's all I would say.
Okay. Mac, I assume this project meets all requirements of the Company.
Yes, sir, it does. And just one further comment about the conservation residential in this particular neighborhood. At the time this land use was applied by the Board of County Commissioners, November 7, 1996, there were no urban services available further up this road. Water and sewer is now available, and that is one of the reasons conservation residential was historically applied on these more environmentally sensitive areas in order to
Go ahead, Mac.
Follow that.
One of the reasons this land use was placed on these lands were because no urban services were available, no water and sewer. You had to have a well, you had to have a septic tank, and the health department essentially requires approximately 1/2 acre if you're going to site both of those on the same lot. That's why that subdivision to the north has essentially 1/2 acre lots. Now that urban services are available, given the demand for housing in our county, especially in South County, this provides an opportunity to provide something other than the high-end beachfront housing in a neighborhood that typically is a working class neighborhood. So we're looking forward to the orderly transition of development on this particular lot that supports moving from the higher density on the Sandestin housing apartment complex to the lower density to the subdivision immediately to the north. As the applicant did point out, there is village mixed use completely to the west, on the west side of Hunters Road, and to the south along US Highway 98. So it's a fairly intensely planned area, and this land use change would complement that particular area.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, did I say something before?
Well,
Make a
sure you
motion?
can.
For the people still here, I'd like to apologize for you having to hear that outburst. Unfortunately, for freedom of speech purposes, there's not a whole lot we can do about it, but I do humbly apologize for you having to listen to that. You know, most of you, and I mean most, at 99.99, you may not agree with somebody, but you present your argument well and without any hate or malice. And I would just like to say I thank you for that, and I appreciate that you take the time to come out and state your opinions on it without that. So, thank you.
Okay. What's the board's wishes?
Motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I think the next item up is a QJ. Ms. Sid?
Yes, but I believe we're not taking any testimony.
Oh, we're not. Oh.
We're not swearing anyone in.
Okay, go ahead, Mac.
Sir, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request essentially by the Planning Department to bring this item back to request that you reconsider the motion made at the previous BCC meeting on this particular project. It was a conceptual development with Phase 1 technical. The additional phases were conceptual. There is a development schedule there. However, this particular development in this land use category of Town Center 1 requires 3 uses to be approved in the development order to be consistent with the comprehensive plan land use category and the requirements of the land development code. That third use is contained in the conceptual portion of this. In addition, the sidewalks to the event facility are contained, I think, in Phase 3. We didn't push those to the first phase or the second phase, recognizing that this parcel is surrounded on 3 sides by state forest. If you're going to this development, you're going to this development and not anywhere else, because there is nowhere else to go down this road. We do believe that sidewalks are important. They're included in the future phases, but due to the limited access that's going to be provided initially on this event facility, it will not be staffed 7 days a week. It'll be staffed based on when they have events out there. So the applicant has requested, for security reasons, to delay the sidewalk implementation to the future phases when we start to have some residential housing associated with it and could have some additional eyes on the property.
Okay, so what do you want us to do?
If you would consider approving the project as presented at the last meeting, which includes the first phase technical, along with the conceptual phases, that would allow us to produce a final order and a development order that's consistent with the Land Development Code, which requires 3 uses. And the third use is wrapped up in the conceptual portion.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, sir. That concludes our agenda.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.